2 minutes until we air. 1 minute until the live stream.
Okay.
1 minute until we air. We are now live streaming.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to City Hall. It's good to see everyone, colleagues. Good to see you all. We are going to call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. And if we will, let's have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this moment, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. It's our practice to stand and salute the flag.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mayor Williams,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton,
I'm here.
Councilmember Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Caballero, Councilmember Cook,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Rist.
Here.
Thank you.
Councilmember Caballero is here. She went upstairs to get something, get her stuff. All right. At this time, we, colleagues, do you have your proclamations? All right. At this time, we have a few proclamations to read, ceremonial items. Councilmember Cook, you would please go first.
Good evening, everyone. If I could have Grace Jones and Liz Schronenberger come join me. Okay, great. All right, this is going to be our Fair Housing Month proclamation. So, whereas the Fair Housing Act enacted on April 11th, 1968, enshrined into federal law the goal of eliminating racial segregation and ending housing discrimination in the United States. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, national origin, and disability, and commits recipients of federal funding to affirmatively further fair housing in their communities. Whereas Durham is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all. Whereas our social fabric, the economy, health, and environment are strengthened in diverse, inclusive communities. And whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, discrimination persists and many communities remain segregated. And whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunity are repugnant to a common sense of decency and fairness. Now, therefore, I, Leonardo Williams, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2024 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Durham, and hereby call upon all residents and encourage all citizens to join activities and discussions that promote understanding, support, and awareness of fair housing. Witness my hand on the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, this 18th day of April 2024.
Hi, I'm Grace Jones. I'm the president of the Durham Regional Association of Realtors, and we appreciate the proclamation, and of course, we're always looking for fair housing. I just want to remind everybody that affordable housing and attainable housing are two different things, and we're striving for both.
Grace, could you go back to the mic? I need you to clarify. I just want to celebrate you for a moment. You are the first African-American woman president of the Realtors Association in how long? Or ever?
101 years.
So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. And if Director Reginald Johnson could join me for the National Community Development Week proclamation. Whereas the week of April the 1st to April the 5th, 2024 has been designated as National Community Development Week by the National Community Development Association to celebrate the Community Development Block Grant Program and Home Investment Partnership Program. Whereas since 1975, the Community Development Block Grant Program has provided annual funding and flexibility to local communities to provide decent, safe, and affordable housing, a suitable living environment, and economic opportunities to low and moderate income people. And whereas since 1992, the HOME program has provided funding to local communities to create decent, safe, and affordable housing opportunities for low-income persons, with over 1 million units of affordable housing having been completed nationally using HOME funds. And whereas over the past few years, 5 years, the City of Durham has received a total of $10,286,304 in CDBG funds and $6,079,152 and home funds. And whereas the City of Durham has used CDBG and home funds directly or in partnership to address the issues surrounding homelessness, including veterans homelessness, to promote home ownership opportunities for low and moderate income households, to develop hundreds of affordable units for low and very low income households, and to repair the homes of very low income seniors, and to revitalize neighborhoods and leverage millions of dollars in additional public and private investment in the Durham neighborhoods. Now, therefore, I, Leonardo Williams, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 1st to April the 5th, 2024 as National Community Development Week in Durham in support of these two valuable programs that have made a tremendous contribution to the vitality of the city's housing stock, infrastructure, and public services, and the economic vitality of our community. Witness my hand and the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, this the first day of April 2024.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. I'm Reginald Johnson, Director of the Department of Community Development for the City of Durham. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, I want to thank you for this proclamation. This is an important piece of work for the city of Durham in terms of the funding that we've received from CDBG and Home, and to celebrate the Community Development Department and the Citizens Advisory Committee are actually hosting 2 events. The first event just concluded in the lobby. 6 organizations who received CDBG and home funding from the city of Durham gathered to share information about activities and projects that were funded and the impact of that funding on their organizations and the community at large. We were represented with the Durham Housing Authority, the Families Moving Forward, the Durham Community Land Trustees, DCLT, Reinvestment Partners, Housing for New Hope, and CASA. We want to thank those organizations for their participation this afternoon. The second event is a webinar occurring on Wednesday, April the 3rd, 2024 at 2 p.m. via Zoom. The webinar will provide information about community development block grants as well as home investment partnership program funds, and provide information to organizations that are interested in participating in our funding. And that information can be found on our website for the City of Durham and the Community Development Department webpage. These events could not have been possible without the Citizens Advisory Committee, who works to preserve and enhance the quality of life for citizens for the City of Durham and Durham County by advising the Durham City Council and the Board of County Commissioners on housing issues. I just would like to take this opportunity to recognize the CAC members, if you would please stand. These are your Citizens Advisory Committee members. Leah Ifrit Green is the chair, Robert Brown vice chair, and Valen Alford secretary. So on behalf of the Community Development Department and the Citizens Advisory Committee, I'm pleased to accept this proclamation. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's my honor to read the International Women's Day Proclamation, and I'd like to invite Shay Ramirez to join me. Oh, yeah. And all the ladies in the first row. Whereas the International Women's History Month is celebrated nationwide on March 8th each year, the observation started in 1909 to honor the movement for women's rights. And whereas the City of Durham looks forward to acknowledging International Women's History Month with the greater community to highlight the achievements, struggles, and ongoing fight for gender equality, while recognizing the persistent systemic barriers and violence. And whereas since 1992, the HOME program has provided funding to local communities to create decent, safe, and affordable housing opportunities. I think this might be the wrong one. For low-income persons, I'm going to keep going. Whereas the recent cases of femicide in North Carolina, such as the tragic death of Liliana Concha, underscore the need for legislative action establishing femicide as a crime, is crucial to recognize the gendered nature of violence, provide justice for victims and their families, enable accurate data collection and research, and serve as a deterrent. And whereas the City of Durham recognizes the importance of taking proactive measures to address gender-based violence and promote the safety and well-being of all residents regardless of gender, and whereas the City of Durham is committed to supporting legislative efforts to classify femicide as a distinct crime, ensuring that perpetrators are held accountable for their actions and that victims receive the justice they deserve. And now, therefore, I, Leonardo Williams, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim March 8th as International Women's Day in Durham and call for its observance by all residents. Let us use this day to honor the achievements of women, raise awareness around gender-based violence, and advocate for policies that promote gender equality and justice for all. Witness my hand and the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, this first day of April 2024.
Good evening. On behalf of the Durham Mayor's Women's Council, We would like to thank you for supporting this proclamation. As a small women's group here in Durham, we understand the needs and wants and urgencies of this proclamation. We also understand the need to address and support collective changes here in Durham. This proclamation gives women a voice and healing for the ones that are seen and unseen here in Durham. We are proud to be able to be a part of the voice for these women here in Durham and women in North Carolina. We want to thank you again, and we look forward to collaborating with the city more and creating positive change here in Durham. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all for making our community better. Thank you. All right. At this moment, we will now have announcements by council members. Councilmember Cook. Any announcements? Okay. Baker? Councilmember Freeman? Councilmember Rist?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Greetings, colleagues, Mayor Pro Tem, and greetings, residents of Durham. I just have two things. First of all, I want to say, it was a beautiful spring weekend, Easter weekend this weekend, and I've been admiring here at City Hall the beautiful landscaping around City Hall, and I hope some folks from General Services are here. Is anybody here? Bertha? Nobody? I just want to say, give them a big shout out. So if I'm a big garden nerd, right? If you're into traditional flowers like tulips and pansies and snapdragons, they're there. But if you're into sort of some more innovative stuff like phlox or hellebores or even trillium, they're all there on the city council or the city hall grounds. It's beautiful. So I encourage everyone to take a walk out there, both residents and employees here at City Hall. And I'll just say, obviously somebody just didn't throw a bunch of bulbs in the ground. This has been done with a lot of care and a lot of thought. So big shout out to the General Services team for the beautiful grounds of City Hall. The second thing I want to say, I want to address a big elephant in the room. It's also a big weekend with March Madness. I am a Blue Devil fan, in case you didn't know. But I got to give a big shout out to all the Wolfpack fans out there. You all deserve the big win yesterday. It's hard for me to say that. Congrats to the Wolfpack, and I will be cheering for them in the Final Four. So, thank you.
That's awesome.
Let's not forget the ladies as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that?
The ladies too. They have both men's and women's going through.
Yeah, they're doing all right. I'll tell you. And Duke is still in women, right?
Nope. Just Wolf. Yeah. It's all state.
No, women. Duke women's basketball.
Oh, good.
Okay. All right. Well, Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I was going to, Councilmember Rist was so gracious because there has been a long history of teasing everyone on this dais during March Madness in particular. I will say that former member, Councilmember Reese and former Mayor Schul had a pretty fun rivalry there for many years as Duke and UNC fans. I am anyone but Duke. Yeah. There's my allegiance. It was, I will say, it was a moment for NC State to have both the women's and men's basketball teams end up. And then I'll say one more about sports and then get on to some more important things. Go Canes. If you like hockey. Anyway, I wanted to shout out, we have some visitors today from Church World Service. They came and did a tour. I want to say thank you to Mayor Williams for being an amazing co-host. We were invited, I think, back in December to an event that they held around kind of just a panel that we sat on. And so from that meeting, we invited them to come tour City Hall, to spend some time with us, to meet everyone else here up on the dais, and to come participate in a city council meeting as a part of continuing civic education for our recently arrived neighbors and friends. So I just want to shout them out. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I think that is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, everyone in the room. Duke is located in Durham
Thank you.
with the Durham City Council. That's all I want to say. Congratulations to the Wolfpack. Incredible season pulling for them. Mr. Mayor, I just want to send goodwill and best wishes out to those who observed Easter this past weekend, to our Jewish brothers and sisters on the celebration of the Passover, and had opportunity to break fast last week with members of our Muslim community. So happy spring to all of our people and our residents. And Mr. Mayor, I know, knowing you've already reached out to your colleague in Baltimore, but I do want to send our city's best wishes and our heart to our colleagues in Baltimore and to the people of Baltimore in the wake of that terrible tragedy of the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Baltimore's in our prayers. We got a lot of friends there and a lot of great colleagues on the council there who are friends of ours here in Durham. So God bless Baltimore. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. You just mentioned that. I've been texting with Brandon, Mayor Scott of Baltimore, and just giving him strength from Durham, from the Bull City to Baltimore. That is a very tragic, thing, because it has such a huge impact on their community. And while they're dealing with the collapse of the bridge, he's having to deal with, the attacks online where folks want to politicize it racially and just the disgusting language. And when you're in that position, as a mayor, your residents rely on you to be responsible for fixing this, and you have you're really limited in what you can do. So shout out to, from Secretary Pete Buttigieg and the Biden-Harris administration to Governor Wes Moore to Mayor Brandon Scott, to the strong residents of Baltimore as they recover. I'm sure, they're resilient. They're going to get through this, but it is tough. In Durham experience, when we had the explosion, you never know when these tragic things are going to happen, but what you can do is just come together as a community and rely on each other to be strong. And that's what Baltimore is doing right now. Also, something that I'll never really get used to, and I don't think any of you all will either, is, it's bad when someone gets shot in our community or gets hurt. It is even worse when it's a child. And I don't have the words for it, but that's what keeps me up at night. That's what keeps me up at night. So I will continue to bring this up and not let us normalize it. I won't let us become desensitized. And colleagues, I will continue to fight for resources that will help us respond to this just as we need to. That's going to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations, but that's one thing I love about this council. We're ready to take on those conversations, and I'm sure we're going to get through it. We're going to figure out what we can. We're going to continue to be the national model in, progressive public safety policies and everything else that we could bring forward. I look forward to us exploring those. To the families that are distraught right now from their child or their neighbor's child that is suffering from, just being shot. I can't believe I'm saying those words. You are in my prayers, but I want you to know that you're in more than that. My commitment is to you to make sure that our community is evolving, to ensure that we have resources to where our kids are being more directed to positive engagement rather than being soaked up in the streets in a negative way. That's all I'll say about that for now. But there are going to be some pretty big initiatives coming really soon that I really hope that will contribute to just engaging in a much more robust way. And I call on every single community member in this community to play a part. There are many people already doing some amazing things, and those folks that are doing those amazing things, from books to mentoring organizations, we got to make sure that the resources are there to serve as tenacity amongst you all, and then we need to find out what else needs to be done, and we need to generate resources for that as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. Considering that, I went to, this is an interesting week. Monday, ear infection. It was really bad. If you get swimmer's ear, I understand. It is not a cool thing. But on Tuesday, we welcomed President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris here to the Triangle. It was my honor to greet them on the tarmac and represent Durham, represent the Bull City on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I flew to Memphis to join my friend, Mayor Paul Young of Memphis. We've been talking about this since D.C., since Harvard. The night I was inaugurated, December 4th, that next day, December 5th, I went to Harvard. And he and I talked about, we should really try and pull, since we see some common trends across the country and when it comes to gun violence, we should try to pull mayors, especially African-American mayors, together to have an intimate conversation on not only idea sharing, but a bit, just have some conversations where we can be a bit innovative together. And so I spent a couple of days in Memphis last week, with Mayor Paul Young and mayors from across the country to talk about gun violence. And we formed a Black Mayors Coalition on Crime. And, it really helps. It really helps to hear what other folks are doing, but also to share what we're doing in Durham. And I gotta say, our HEART program is a national model that is light years beyond what a lot of folks are doing. And so it just felt good to be able to share that. I spent some time with Chief Davis, our former police chief, and so that was great. And I'll close with I have some guests here tonight, and I want to recognize them and call them up. I'm actually joined by the Students in Public Service from NCCU. And this is the inaugural cohort of the NCCU Students in Public Service. So when I call your name, come on up. Deshira Clark, Ronnie Butts, Michael Lorker Winter, Ariana Wachter, Chantel Elisa Chestnut, and Shama Charles. And this program, Students in Public Service, this is an academy that was launched on February 24th to foster leadership, civic engagement, and social responsibility, aligning with Durham's core values of courage, action, progress, high quality and all growth, and high ideals. Remember, that's what the flag stands for. And our Students in Public Service empowers students to confront social issues fearlessly, engage with their community, and strive for excellence in public service. I would like to encourage the community members to support and engage with SIPS, this academy, and recognize its potential to drive positive change in Durham and beyond. And so, Courtney, there you are. I'd like to invite you to just share a few words about this new initiative that you all have going on here.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm the Director of Students in Public Service Academy. My name is Courtney Boykin. It's my pleasure to introduce this initiative to you tonight. I first want to extend our gratitude to our partner, the Volker Alliance Next Generation Service Corps, for their support, the recognition of North Carolina Central University's commitment to fostering active engagement in public service, promoting diverse leadership, and supporting collaborative efforts is truly appreciated. We are proud to announce that NCCU is the first HBCU to inaugurate the Public Service Initiative, thanks to their invaluable support of our esteemed partner. We must recognize that the effectiveness of governance critically depends on the caliber of education imparted by our higher education institutions. Therefore, investing in education, particularly at the higher level, becomes imperative for cultivating a competent and informed workforce essential for steering effective governance and propelling societal advancement. With this in mind, we provide students with enriching opportunities aimed at nurturing their potential to emerge as leaders in the public service sector. For example, participating in this city council meeting marks just the beginning of a series of experiential learning endeavors. Our vision extends beyond local boundaries. We aspire to offer students diverse experiences on local, national, and global scales. As I embark on securing funding for SIPS Academy, I am driven by numerous aspirations aimed at fortifying its mission. Our goal is to equip students with skills capable of not only catalyzing community transformation, but also expanding diversity within the public service sector, reflecting the rich tapestry of our nation's demographics. Moreover, we aim to cultivate an ideology of inclusive collaboration among students, fostering an environment where diverse perspectives converge to drive impactful change. Empowering the leaders of tomorrow starts with providing students enriching opportunities tailored to cultivate their potential within the realm of public service. Students will be equipped with the essential knowledge, skills, and hands-on experience necessary to tackle complex challenges, drive innovation, and enact positive change in their communities and beyond. In doing so, we aim to empower the next generation of leaders to navigate the complexities of our interconnected world and make meaningful contributions to society regardless of geographic or cultural barriers. Thank you.
Thank you. We've been wanting a youth engagement program like this, and thanks, NCCU for inaugurating this and being the first in the nation, HBCUs. All right, colleagues, let's get to work. At this time, I'll recognize the manager for any priority items.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Williams, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and members of the Durham City Council. I have no priority items for you this evening.
All right. Madam Attorney.
Good evening, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, members of the council. It's good to see you. The City Attorney's Office also has no priority items this evening.
I like when you don't have any. That's good. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, everyone. The City Clerk's Office also has no priority items tonight.
All right. Gonna make up some time. All right. So at this moment, I'll go ahead and read the consent agenda. All right, item number 1, Recreation Advisory Commission appointment. Item number 2, Durham City County Environmental Affairs Board appointment. 3, Durham Cultural Advisory Board appointment. 4, February 2024 bid report. 5, Take-Home Vehicle Performance Audit Report, February 2024. Number 6, Fiscal Year 2024-2025 Budget Development Guidelines. Number 7, Fiscal Year 24 Grant Agreement for an Immigration Legal Defense Project. Number 8, American Rescue Plan Act ARPA Project, Workers' Sustainability. Number 9, McKissick Square Development Amended Loan Commitment, American Rescue Plan Act, Affordable Housing Funds. Number 11, Revised Ordinance, Sunset Extension and Policy for the Equal Business Opportunity Program, EBOP.
Can you pull that one?
Sure. That's number 11. Number 12, proposed lease agreements with Durham Housing Authority at 531 Lakeland Street. Number 13, 10th Amendment to the assignment agreement for the Durham Athletic Park operating agreement. I don't want to pull that just yet, but I will say that is something I hope we can bring up for discussion soon, colleagues. I was not able to prepare for pulling it tonight, but I think that's something we need to talk about soon. Number 13. Number 14, Project Construction Manager at Risk, CMAR, contract for pre-construction services with LaChase Construction Services, LLC, for the City Hall and Annex HVAC project. Number 15, contract with MBP Carolinas Incorporated for commissioning services for the City Hall Annex HVAC project. Number 16, professional services design contract with CMTA of Kentucky Incorporated for the City Hall Annex HVAC project. Number 17, interlocal agreement with Durham County for the Southeast Durham Watershed Improvement Plan. Number 18, Second Amendment and a restated contract with Atlas Organics CuO2 LLC for management of the city-owned composting facilities. Number 20, Consolidated Annexation R 751. 21, Consolidated Annexation Leigh Valley. Number 22, Consolidated Annexation 1324 Bungalow Avenue. Those are all of our items. Which we just have 11 that's pulled, right?
Pull 11.
11. All right. I'll now entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda with item number 11 pulled.
Move to adopt a consent.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded.
Just to know, I don't have a clicker, so.
It's right in front of you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, we will start with number 11, the pulled item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if anyone from finance is here to speak to this. Oh, great. Yeah, great.
Good evening. I'm Sheila Fawcett, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. I'm from Finance, the Deputy CFO. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have tonight.
There you go. Speak to the mic.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, Ms. Fawcett. As you know, I'm a big fan of our minority or our EBOP program, and I want to make sure that we reach all our goals for minority participation. I just have a small item here, and I thought when we talked about the goals for next year and the phrasing of these aspirational goals, and I thought we agreed that we were going to take out aspiration and just say these are our goals. And again, because I want to make sure that we give you and your team all the resources to meet those goals. But I'm concerned that if we phrase them as aspirational goals, I'm not sure what an aspirational goal is. So I thought we were going to strike that phrase from the document.
Okay, sorry about that. My understanding, I thought as we did discuss that, I thought that you still wanted those in there after we made our explanation.
Yeah, I'd prefer just to say goals.
Goals.
That we have strong goals. Yeah, I don't know what the procedure is for how do we wrestle that one down, but that's my preference.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank Councilmember Riss. We did have a conversation. We did not, as a council, say take it out. You're free. Any council member can vote against it, but if it doesn't cross the threshold of changing the language, then we either vote for it or just vote it down. I did in that conversation as well. I think since Councilmember Riss has raised it tonight and it's within the scope of our discussion, my sense is that aspirational speaks to how difficult it is to legislate racism and to try and deal with the effects of it. I think our folk who work in this area have been doing a magnificent job, but not only in this area. I mean, we note that as much as we want to close the achievement gap in education, they're still lagging, and to close the wealth gap between black and white folk. So I think also aspirational was raised because we wanted to be sensitive to the legal barriers we were dealing with and not establishing quotas or suggesting that we had firm goals. So I'm comfortable with the language, and certainly, I've had to have votes not go my way sometimes as well, but we're certainly free as council members to vote it down. But we did not take any action as a council. It did not cross a 4-vote threshold to change that particular language. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could just respond to that. So my understanding was that, and I appreciate, Mayor Pro Tem, your comments, and this maybe my inexperience on the council. I thought staff agreed to take that out. That was my understanding. So I didn't understand there was a need for a vote on that. But if that's the case, next time I'll make sure that we do call for a vote.
I think we can just ask for a thumbs up.
I'm sorry. We can address it now, actually. I'm going to ask Ms. Fawcett, if you don't mind, just restating the explanation of why.
So State statute does not allow us to have a required. What we are required to do is to make a good faith effort towards the goals, and that's why we name them aspirational, if that helps.
So your understanding of that language is if it's just straight goals, then therefore we're setting hard earmarks. We're not legally allowed to do that.
Correct.
So aspirational is aspirational.
It's aspirational, correct. Okay. It is aspirational. And we, as the finance director stated, we're okay with that if that's how you would like to strike that in your motion or in your vote tonight.
Madam.
Thank you. Could City Attorney Lamar come to the podium?
Good evening. Fred Lamar with the City Attorney's Office.
Thank you. Out of just curiosity, I mean, a goal is a goal. It's not the word quota, so
I don't think there's a difference in the terms.
Okay.
From a legal standpoint.
So from a legal standpoint, we could do either way?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Now that we have, I think, clear direction from staff that we can just strike the thing and accept the item, if you're willing to take a motion on that, I don't know.
I'm going to ask for a motion considering it's an agenda item. So are you making an amendment? Would you like to call for an amendment?
I'd like to, yeah. Yes, please, yeah.
All right, so just state it.
Yeah, so I'd move that that we, regarding them, I'm sorry, let me pull it up here. Yeah, amending item number 11.
Okay.
By removing the word aspirational.
One moment.
From the
council member, one moment. I'm going to need you to actually, so the ordinance is what has to actually be changed. Where is it?
Right, and I think there's a couple places, if I'm not mistaken, where it refers to the, I think there's a definition piece and then elsewhere.
So
it's in the definition.
Can we do like basically amend it? Can he make the motion to amend the ordinance by striking the word aspirational before those?
I think, yes, okay. Mr. Mayor, he could do that.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, so we can, I can move that we amend the number 11, the revised ordinance, by striking the word aspirational prior to goals.
Second.
All right, colleagues, all in favor? I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, please open the vote. It's been moved and properly second. Please open the vote.
Mr. Mayor, discussion?
Discussion.
Yeah, I'm not voting for this. I'm not going to second guess the staff on the work that they've done. There's a lot of reasons why they use the language that they do. And I trust their guidance. I trust the years of experience that have led them to the crafting of the language. So I won't be voting for this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close it. All right, thank you.
Motion passes 6-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Middleton voting no.
All right. Right. Yep. All right, now, colleagues, I'll entertain a motion to accept the, I'll now entertain a motion to adopt an ordinance to revise the Equal Business Opportunity Program to promote equal business opportunities in city contracting.
Moved as read.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Please open the vote, Madam Clerk. Please close.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. And I'll now entertain a motion to authorize the city manager to establish an EBOP implementation policy and to make subsequent revisions to the policy as necessary to effectively administer the EBOP ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the poll. Please close.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks, colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Fawcett. All right, which is number 20, right? All right. We're now on item 20, Consolidated Annexation R751. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and honorable council members. Aaron Kane with the Planning Department. Happy to be with you here tonight. Before I begin, staff would like to state for the record that all Planning Department hearing items have been advertised and noticed in accordance with state and local law, and affidavits of all notices are on file in the Planning Department. A request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and initial zoning map change has been received from Collier Marsh of Parker Poe for 2 parcels of land totaling 11.92 acres and located at 8116 NC Highway 751 and 102 Wayfield Avenue. This annexation petition, BGG 2300003, is for a contiguous expansion of the primary corporate limits to allow up to 350 multifamily apartment units. The applicant has also requested a zoning map change from residential rural to planned development residential 30.594. The properties are currently designated mixed residential neighborhood on the place type map. The proposed PDR 30.594 zoning is consistent with the designated use shown on the place type map. The Planning Commission recommended denial on a 9-0 vote at its November 12, 2023 meeting. Since that meeting, the applicant has proffered several additional commitments, including protection of the adjacent natural heritage area, primary buildings meeting a national green building standard, provision of 10 electric vehicle charging stations, an off-site 5-foot sidewalk to connect the site to an existing sidewalk network, and an increase in the number of income-restricted units with a longer tenure. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. You've heard the staff report. Colleagues, are there any questions for staff? All right, I'll now declare this, I'm sorry, Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sure. Just a really quick question. So we saw that there was a national green standard, and they talked about primary buildings. Can you tell me what the definition is of a primary building? I'm specifically asking because I know that there are apartment buildings that are suggested as or that's what the request has been, and I'm wondering if those whole buildings count as primary buildings.
That would certainly our interpretation of staff. I'll ask the applicant to clarify that if need be, but that was certainly the apartment buildings themselves is what are referred to as the primary structures, and we wouldn't be talking about, say, a storage shed for the lawnmower or something along those lines.
Right. I was wondering if it was more like community, if there was a community center, but we're talking about the actual buildings housing the apartments.
There could certainly be a community center that is allowed as an accessory use. The applicant does not at this time have to state whether or not there would be such a building. I don't know if the applicant's willing to make a statement to that effect at this time, but we would certainly also see, say, a community building with a meeting room and so forth. We would also see that as a primary building.
Okay, so just for, and I think I'm restating what you've just said, but just for my clarification, so all of these buildings would be considered primary buildings for the National Green Standard, so those would all have to meet that as the proffer was made?
That's our interpretation,
Thank
yes.
You. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Got it. All right, I'll now declare this public hearing open. One, two, 3, 4, 5. These. All right, we have the applicant here. Welcome. How much time do you think you need?
10 minutes, please.
All right, could you put 12 minutes on the clock? Thank you. Welcome. And you and I share this height situation, so you are going to have to uncomfortably get, yeah.
I'll get the full hunch. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. I'm Collier Marsh with Parker Poe at 301 Fayetteville Street. here on behalf of the applicant. With me is Ryan Stewart with Trinsic Residential. And if we look familiar, we were here with a very similar project for Trinsic Residential about a month ago. That was Aura Greenhill. This is now Aura 751, which if we could pull up the presentation. There we go. This is a very similar project to the one we brought a month ago. The site and surrounding area, for context, our property is in the bottom left of this slide here, outlined in red. It's about 12 total acres. We are on 751 with 751 frontage, very close proximity to Highway 40 and the 751 interchange, and then all of the dense commercial development of the streets of South Point and all of the commercial that's developed around it. One of the things that I think is interesting when you look at this site and the surrounding area is when you look at the residential that's been developed around it, it's predominantly single-family detached and townhomes, which I think if you were going to start from scratch with this level of commercial, we'd be looking at something that's a lot different if you had an opportunity to do it again. And so this site and actually the Future Growth Framework map recognized the need for some change in this area. So this site is designated as the mixed residential designation. What that calls for is a mixture of residential types. When you look to sites such as this that are under 20 acres, we're at about 12 acres, what the Future Growth Framework map says is you look to the surrounding area and the housing types that exist, and you try to add additional housing diversity through these new developments. And so that's exactly what we're seeking to do here, is to add a different product type to what's offered there to add needed density to the area. And so we're proposing a multifamily development that will be compatible with the surrounding area. And if the zoning right now is rural residential, to achieve the goal of a multifamily development, we'd be zoning to PDR. Annexation is also required as part of this, and it is consistent with the city's annexation policies. We're contiguous and would have efficient extension of utilities. This is our graphic development plan to accompany a number of written text commitments with the project. And some of the things just to point out are the site access points, both out onto 751. A minimum of 2.29 acres of existing tree coverage would be preserved. The light green is meant to depict buffers, so the lightest color, the widest section next to single-family neighbors. But we also have a darker green color there meant to depict a primary building setback. Again, that's multifamily buildings. That commitment on green building structure was meant to encompass the apartment buildings and certainly community amenities, so if a clarification was needed, we're open to that. But that building setback was meant to ensure effective transitions and to be sensitive to our single-family neighbors, and it's evolved through this process. Project would also provide a shared use path along its 751 frontage and additional 30 feet of right-of-way should 751 be widened in the future. This project, as you see it today, is the product of extensive community involvement. We had 3 neighborhood meetings, the required one at the outset, one shortly before Planning Commission, and then one again between Planning Commission and Council to keep neighbors up to speed, to make sure we were listening, to tell them the changes that we've made to address the feedback we heard. And that feedback is summarized here with the changes we made. I already alluded to the building setback. That was direct response to neighbors to the north, asking if we're going to have multifamily near our homes, what would that be like? Initially, we had proffered a 60-foot commitment that increased to 75 feet after we took a closer look, getting further down in the process. Also heard concerns from neighbors about the environmental impacts of this project, and so we had offered to preserve a natural heritage area, which if we look back on this slide, there's an area dark gray with a slight bit of overlap on our property where some unique species have been identified, and so we're ensuring that that would be preserved on our site, wouldn't be disturbed. We also have a requirement to plant only native trees within the project, and then in response to stormwater controls concerns, enhance stormwater controls up to the 100-year storm. So we went to Planning Commission and unfortunately received a 9-0 vote recommending denial, which we were surprised by, but having had a project with the same development team that had a unanimous recommendation for approval, we had a good roadmap to go by. So we took the Aura Greenhill case that just came in front of council. We looked at everything we offered in that case and matched it as best we could for this project. So we have a number of increased commitments that we're presenting tonight. When we went to Planning Commission, we had an offer of 11 affordable units at 80% 80% AMI for a period of 20 years, and we've increased that in really significant ways. The period has gone from 20 to 30 years. We've doubled the number of units from 11 to 22, but most importantly, those additional 11 units are at a better affordability level, now at 60% AMI. So previously it was 11 at 80% AMI, the next 11 are at 60% AMI, so doubling, but also much more meaningful with what we're providing. Heard additional concerns with a vacant parcel about environmental impacts, so we added a green building certification. The intent with that exclusion for only primary buildings was things like dumpsters or a shed, and so that was what we were clarifying wouldn't have a green building standard because we wouldn't know how to do it. We added EV charging, 10 EV chargers to the project. This next change had to do with some planning commission feedback where although multifamily may be appropriate for the site, one of the views with multifamily development is that one of the benefits of density is that people can walk to the surrounding area. A unique aspect of this site is our northern property line on 751, there's actually a gap of sidewalk just north of the property. It looks like a small commitment to make that sidewalk connection, but that was the bulk of the work between Planning Commission and now was sorting through all the layers of the rights that exist, the rights that apply to make sure that we could complete that connection, and we're offering to do it, which means that when folks will now be able to walk from our site all the way up to the commercial area around streets at South Point and to nearby transit stops. So it's sounds small, but it's a really meaningful commitment for the impact on this project. And then finally, I talked about that setback, and that was increased. We took a look at kind of the potential density and layout of the site and increased building setbacks to further address comments from neighbors. So this slide just summarizes the key text commitments. They're extensive. They're meant to mimic the Green Hill project. Cap at 350 units. Actually have a minimum of 4 stories. That's to inform traffic. And as we know, as you go up in height, you actually have less trips per unit. So that informs it to be less of a traffic impact if you ensure a minimum development height here. I talked about the tree preservation and enhanced stormwater controls. Our affordability is strong and only got better between Planning Commission and now. Then we've got the green building certification, EV charging, that connection that I talked about, as well as additional environmental commitments. The result is that when we were at Planning Commission, we were consistent with 12 of 22 policies. We're now up to 18 of 22. So it took a lot of effort, but we think that now overwhelmingly consistent, not only by having those policies identified, but by having a large volume of them consistent by exceeding the requirements, not just meeting them, more exceeding than meeting the UDO requirements. So ultimately, we hope that the council will agree that we're consistent with the comprehensive plan. We meet the future growth framework maps recommendation for this site, and that ultimately this is a project worth approving. We're happy to answer questions of the council and have a number of members of our development team available to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to start with our speakers online.
They were all there except one.
Okay. All right. First person we have up is Andrea Medinblick.
Hi, Andrea Medinblick here.
Hey
I'm
there,
802.
welcome. If you can do me a favor and speak closer into your mic, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's much better. Thanks.
Great. Hi, I'm Andrea Medinblick, 8022 Sundance Circle. I'm the HOA president for the Reserve at South Point neighborhood to the north of the property, and we are opposed to the rezoning. Our first concern is traffic. It's already very difficult and unsafe to turn onto Highway 751 due to high traffic volume. Wrecks occur frequently in this area. We expect that the added 1,400 daily car trips will worsen the situation, especially at peak hours. And the ITE trip generation manual 10th edition states that a project this size can lead to 154 peak hour trips per city policy, more than 150 peak hour trips to trigger a traffic impact analysis. That was not completed for this proposal. We see it's unacceptable to move forward without any planned roadway improvements, especially considering the several other new developments within about 2 miles of this site. Second, our concern about affordable housing. 11 units at 60% AMI and 11 units at 80% AMI for 30 years is still below the comprehensive plan targets. Policy 40 states that housing affordability should run in perpetuity. and Policy 42 prioritizes affordable housing in the 30 to 50% AMI range. This property will be very accessible to bus stops, greenways, commercial centers, via sidewalks. So it's a solid candidate for affordable housing that isn't car dependent. Third, environmental impact. Wetlands serve critical roles for water quality and quantity. EV charging and green building certification is good, but unrelated to the fact that this property directly drains to an adjacent adjacent protected wetland that is a natural heritage area and critical watershed protection area. The city's critical areas protection plan lists this property as keystone riparian property. That means this is one of the highest priority parcels identified for protection in this watershed. And as personally an environmental scientist, I assess that this proposal fails to sufficiently meet 8 separate environmental related comprehensive plan policies. And we would just urge the City Council to investigate how this project could potentially decrease its environmental impact on such a critical piece of land. In summary, we oppose the rezoning due to safety concerns with traffic and its failure to align with the comprehensive plans in the current state of the project proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to ask that you email those to the council as well.
Okay, happy to do that.
We can make out, but it was a little distorted. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next, we have Nathan Jennis.
Yes, good evening. How are you all doing tonight?
Pretty good. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I think Andrea summed up my concerns pretty well and the concerns of the neighborhood. I'm also in the reserve at South Point at 8033 Sundance Circle. And yeah, she highlighted traffic, which is a major concern. The proposal says it would add 1,400 trips. I think it's more in the neighborhood of 1,600 because they're currently assigning about 200 trips a day to a vacant wooded lot, which I think is not reasonable. And both the proposed entrances are on opposite sides of a peak of a hill, which I think will lead to reduced visibility and the potential for greater accidents. And I'm a father of a 9-year-old daughter, so school is an important issue for me. And currently, the local schools are at 106% of capacity. This will just add to that issue of overcapacity. As Andrea mentioned, the affordable housing aspect of it, it's 22 units out of 350. This is 6%. I think that's woefully inadequate for the goals of the city of Durham. And as Collier Marsh mentioned, this is zoned for mixed residential neighborhood, and this is not such a building. It is purely apartments. And just on a more basic level, I don't see how this project fills any need for the area. It was presented that there's not adequate apartments in the neighborhood, but if you look within half a mile, there's the Lodge at South Point, which is a massive apartment complex that currently has vacancies. If you look in a 3-mile range, there's 10 to 12 apartment complexes. And I'm sure the council is well aware of the plans for the streets of South Point, which is adding something over 1,000 apartment units eventually. So I don't think apartment units are what's necessary. I think the residents of Durham need affordable housing, accessible housing, and a way to build long-term equity. To me, this project just symbolizes benefiting an out-of-state developer, an out-of-state property management company, and a law firm from Raleigh. There's no one from Durham benefiting from this. And I feel like the city council's duty is to the people of Durham. And we, the people of Durham, are telling you this does not benefit us in any way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Andrea, if you can still hear me, or Nathan, you can pass the message to your neighbor. That email is citycouncilonly@durhamnc.gov. citycouncilonly@durhamnc.gov for you to email your comments. This is for the speaker previously. All right, next I have Rebecca Ives.
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I live at 8021 Sundance Circle. I'm a resident of the Reserve at South Point. I would back up directly to this proposed development. My continued opposition, and I spoke at the Planning Commission meeting in November, to this particular development is not what I'm going to see out in my backyard, but specifically the significant increase in traffic flow in both directions on 751 that this large apartment complex would bring to an extremely hazardous section of roadway. I'm not sure who on the council lives in this area or is familiar with this, but the intersection of 751 Renaissance to where 751 leaves Durham County and enters Chatham Wake, it is a life-threatening traffic corridor for commuters moving from Durham to Wake and vice versa every day. If any voting member of the council were to come out to this section of 751 between the hours of 6:30 to 9:30 a.m. Monday through Friday or 3 to 7:30 Monday through Friday, you would observe the dangerous conditions that already exist before we add more development. I would be appalled if you could vote in favor of this project moving forward as it has been proposed. We have accidents, road rage, standstill traffic, and we cannot turn into oncoming traffic in either direction. And this is just for car traffic. Pedestrians on foot cannot cross the road. Just last week, a high schooler was involved in a substantial accident in afternoon traffic, rendering both cars undrivable directly at the proposed entrance location to Aura 751. No one is safe here, and we have not even started new development. At a minimum, to everyone else's point, a traffic study must be done. To speak plainly, I am not against development. It is necessary, and as a real estate agent in Durham, I realistically embrace it. But putting an apartment community in this location is not good development for Durham. We have 4 large rental complexes within 1 mile of this proposed development, and they are not even close to full occupancy. We really need single-family homes, not overpriced apartments that are not on a bus line and that will be wildly unaffordable to the people in Durham who actually need housing the most. The Planning Commission, thankfully, unanimously voted against this project last year. City Council, please show your support for planning's stance on this and vote against this development and against rezoning or annexing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Fred Anderson.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson is not in the queue.
Oh, okay, you didn't check that, I'm sorry. Next, I have Ronnie Covington.
Speaking on the Leigh Valley development, not on Aura off 751.
Yeah. Leigh Valley. She said Leigh Valley, right? Okay. Okay, she just signed up for the wrong one. All right, thank you. All right, we'll move now into in person. That's proponent, opponent. Okay, do we have a Kevin Sullivan here? All right, welcome. You have 3 minutes to state whether you are proponent or opponent. I have you as a opponent.
Opponent, sir. Yes, sir. And first, just to note for Rick Anderson is the other HOA president in the area, intended to speak in opposition to this, but isn't able to log in and join as a registered speaker. My name is Kevin Sullivan. I'm here representing the 117 homes and 250 registered voters in the Eagle Point HOA, which is one of the 3 HOAs and one of the 3 neighborhoods that sit adjacent to this proposed property. We'd like to ask the council to recall the planning board did vote unanimously not to support this development, and that decision was prudent. We'd ask the council to respect it and uphold that decision. The only changes that the applicant has really made to address the resident concerns in this area are the addition of the sidewalk to the area. My neighbors have significantly explored the traffic concerns and some of the safety concerns, so I won't dwell on those. We would like to emphasize, though, that the city has recently approved the very large development at the South Point Mall with residential and commercial structures. Our HOA has supported that. We believe that was good development for the area and right and proper. But such a significant development in the area has to be allowed to come to fruition before we add other significant developments to the area so that we can understand as a community how these things will play out. Not explored by my neighbors here are the proposed ecological impacts that will negatively impact the whole area based on this. You've heard about some of the stormwater concerns. The changes made by the developers do not adequately address those. What we see in the area is a significant change to the water table based on all of the development that's happened. Adding significant structures and foundations for 4- and 5-story buildings will exacerbate that. Not only will the stormwater problems create issues for the neighbors adjacent to the property, but they are already creating massive flooding in areas when we see significant rainfall in the area, including along Morel Lane and including along the areas that back up to the Army Corps of Engineer land in the area. The residential rural designation is significant for these ecological reasons and also should be respected in the area. We also find the claims that the developers made to improve the low-income housing provisions in this area to be somewhat laughable. The low-income housing provisions that they've set aside require residents to be making $55,000 and $65,000 a year just to qualify for inclusion. And we don't really feel like that's the kind of community that we want to create in the area. We'd love to see more affordable housing units that are truly affordable for people who work and live in our community, including at the streets of South Point and at the other commercial buildings and structures in the area. So for this reason, we oppose the development. We're the developer proposing something that was more moderate in number of units, smaller, maybe additional townhomes that were consistent with the development in that particular area, where there are not significant safety concerns about the traffic or ecological concerns about the impact of the area. We would not oppose this, but those are not considered here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Cal Cunningham. You can state whether you're opponent or proponent. I have you as a proponent.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, distinguished members of council, it's an honor to be in front of you. I have a long-standing personal and professional relationship with the landowners whose land is intended to be rezoned and annexed here. Charles and Brenda Beckton, Catherine Booth Butler. They have asked me to bring their support to you for why they believe this developer with this development is the right one at this time. Charles and Brenda Beckton have called Durham home since the 1960s when they graduated from Duke Law. Mr. Beckton, as he prefers to be called, was our interim chancellor here at Central. He's a longtime professor of race, law, trial advocacy. He was my trial advocacy teacher many, many moons ago. He was the first African-American male president of the North Carolina Bar Association. His wife, Brenda, started her career at this very city attorney's office, was a staff attorney with Durham Legal Aid, and an administrative law judge. For those who are keeping score, their 3 children were born at Durham Regional, Watts, and Duke. Catherine Booth Butler, this Thursday, will be able to say that 78 years she has called Durham home. She was also born in Watts. She's here with us this evening. She's been a long-time conservator of lands that were acquired by her father over many, many, many years. She is passionate about protecting the ecological ecosystem along Jordan Lake and its tributaries, which this does back up to. She's been working with the North Carolina Department of Transportation to make this a scenic byway down Highway 751. They have long wrestled, the Becktons and Miss Butler, with what's an appropriate gainful use of this land, but one that also is aligned with Durham's goals, its community goals. They particularly wanted me to commend to you the fact that this adds housing in a part of Durham that desperately needs housing, quality housing. By setting aside at 60 and 80% of AMI, they're building, this developer team is building actual affordable housing on the ground. That does not happen every time in front of this council. They commend to you the preservation of the natural heritage area on the west side of this site, the preservation of over 2 acres of trees on this site, the fact that it will be built with green building certification and advanced stormwater engineering. They know that not all of their neighbors approve of this or find this best, but they commend this team for thoughtfully listening through over 3 neighborhood meetings and Planning Commission, strengthening the proposal that's in front of you along the way. Given the critical need for quality, affordable housing, and particularly south of I-40, they commend this to you as part of their legacy in a community that they deeply, deeply love. Thank you for the opportunity to bring their comments to you.
Thank you so much. And I have, the last speaker I have is Collie Marsh. Online. Oh, I'm sorry. So that was the last speaker I had. All right. Well, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone else that would like to speak on it, would you like to respond?
If I could just make a few remarks to respond. So in listening to the neighbors, and we certainly understand, looking at the existing neighborhoods, that some of the change happening, proposed multifamily in close proximity to single-family neighborhoods, some contrast here, but that's exactly what the comprehensive plan and the future growth framework map calls for, is to mix up the housing options that are available there, and we're trying to do it in a thoughtful and sensitive way that sets a really strong precedent for all the other projects that can come in this area. Heard comments about an out-of-state developer. We didn't really emphasize these points, but Ryan Stewart's the director of Trinsic Residential, born and raised in Durham, Durham resident, leader of the team for about 15 projects that are active in the Triangle right now. So this is not an out-of-state developer. It's a local group that cares deeply about the community. The issues that we heard, affordable housing, I think we have a strong commitment, but to put it in perspective, by right today, as the staff report indicates, you can build 17 single-family units on the site. We're offering 22 affordable units with this project. So we're already exceeding the by right allotment with affordable units. Also heard about environmental concerns, and we're open to ideas if there's more we should be doing, but we think that we're setting a really strong precedent for sustainable development with green building certification, stormwater controls, and any number of other commitments. And the last item was traffic, and I'd actually ask Earl Llewellyn just to come up briefly and talk about traffic here. Our traffic engineer is involved in the project. A TIA was not required, but we still did some investigation based on what the neighbor said to ensure that we're doing everything we can with this project.
Thanks, Collier. As Collier said, a traffic study was not required for this project because it doesn't meet the UDO threshold of 150 peak hour trips. However, in our discussions with NCDOT staff discussing driveway locations and turn lanes, they asked that a limited scope study be conducted, which we did. That analyzed the driveways for turn lanes, which you see as commitments on the development plan itself. We also conducted a signal warrant analysis for the intersection of our site driveway with Buck Crossing and found that it was not warranted. We also looked at the NCDOT HSIP, which identifies high accident locations. None were identified in this area. So that's sort of a summary of my findings.
All right. If there are no more comments, I will declare this public hearing closed and bring it back before the council. Colleagues.
I have a question for staff, and then I have a couple of questions for applicants.
Hey.
Hi, good to see you, Aaron. Can we get some clarification, because it's coming up, and I'm not expecting it for maybe this case, but this whole mixed neighborhood use in the comp plan. I'm seeing comments from, in this case in particular, Commissioner Cease, who is really great about leaving really thorough comments on, and one of the only planning commissioners who does that. And so I really value his opinion, but it consistently keeps coming up, and it seems that there is not, and that's what neighbors are saying too, well, there's only one housing type. My interpretation, and this is where there maybe needs to be some clarity, is there's already other housing types, so the burden isn't on this developer to provide that. But that might be, unless it was a larger project. But that might be my interpretation, and so I just would love some clarity from staff, and then I would love some clarity in our comp plan, and I would love an explanation on how we do that. Thank you.
Sure. So the comp plan policies regarding the mixed residential neighborhood place type talk about certain acreage, developable acreage thresholds to require more than one housing type on the site itself. And what it says is if you have 20 acres of developable land, you need to provide at least 2 housing types. If you have 50 acres of developable land, you have to provide 3 housing types. We don't have a policy about how many housing types you have to have under 20 acres, which this site is. And so what we prefer to do in those cases, knowing that there's likely only going to be one housing type, is look at the surrounding area. Is this introducing a new housing type in the surrounding area? Because one thing that the comprehensive plan talks about quite a bit is having a mix of housing types in all of our locations throughout Durham. So we don't have one part of Durham that is the apartment area and one part of Durham that is solely single family residential and so forth. And so that's what we did in this case. There's a lot of single family. There is some townhouses in the area. So we looked at the introduction of apartments as a new housing type in the area and therefore meeting the policy.
And it was under 20 acres. Can we get some training for planning commissioners to understand that? Because what I'm seeing is that it's open to interpretation, and so then what I can, and also it's now being communicated out into residents. I'm getting emails that planning staff has changed the rules and some other things that I'm getting, and it's just misinformation at this point, and so it is our job to correct that as much as possible. As a council member, I want to, I try and do the best I can, we all do it, but I do it on facts and not vibes. So thank you. I have a question for applicant. Thank you. This is a for rent product, or is it a for sale product?
This would be for rent product.
Okay, that's what I assumed as an apartment, so it's not condoized. It's a rental product and mostly a for sale ecosystem.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Can I keep going? Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and indicate to council. So I drove this earlier today with my council colleague, Rist, because we had a meeting with the development team a little while ago, and we just couldn't remember how far down it was on 751. I will be supporting this. I think that I get why neighbors are upset. I will say so the fact that the HOA, so I voted down the South Point proposal because it didn't have affordable housing on it. That's literally why I voted it down. And so that residents are asking for more affordable housing. This is what I think. I think this is a for rent product, which means that the population may be a little bit more transient. Maybe you're going to get more diversity. And so, let's just call a spade a spade. I think that the reason that the neighbors are coming out is these are mostly homeowners who at this point, their asset is worth probably a lot. They bought into Durham 20 years ago when South Point kind of blew up. And it isn't in Durham's values to essentially be, in one of the comments, they were worried about noise. So my interpretation is it comes down to, well, we don't want those kinds of folks renting near where I own a home and my asset. And that's just not a value I'm going to support as a council member. I understand folks are scared of change, we all are. But when I think about that you're going to be able to walk to a major commercial center, get on a bus that is now free, access jobs all there. There's an Aldi up there on the corner. That's an extremely affordable grocery store. There's a Target that you can walk to up the road. I know the area well. I drive around here a lot. I don't live on this side of town, but I know it okay. And so I will be supporting it, and I know some council members, we all kind of wonder where's everyone at. I think this is exactly what we need in an area that is heavily commercial. It connects residents. It has a strong housing commitment, affordable housing commitment. Is it 10%? No, but technically we're not supposed to have any. That's a goal. We do not have inclusionary zoning in Durham. We are not allowed to have it. if it were up to me, I would make a requirement to be 20%, but that is not something that I get to do in the lane of power I am in. I really appreciate the commitments to the green building. That's another commitment in our housing policy. I think it was referenced as, I forgot how many it is. 18 out of 22 applicable policies. What I've seen is the developer who's really tried to meet neighbors where they are, and sometimes, you know, we fail, we try, and folks are just not going to be happy. Thank you.
Councilmember Cook.
I just have one quick question for the applicant. You had pulled up a map and had showed this gray area where there were some species that were identified that you were worried about disturbing. And I'm looking at the utility connections for the nearby areas, and what I'm seeing is that it appears that all of the utility connections are going to go right through that space that you identified as being a problematic one.
If we're able to get back to the presentation, so it should have been more clear. So there's a gray area on our western boundary, which is the natural heritage area. The gray on the frontage, I think, is meant to actually show the additional right-of-way that we'd be dedicating for future widening. So those are two different spots. So I should have been more clear, and I hadn't even noticed that was gray. But I'm referring to the section on the left-hand side where it just crosses our corner.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate that clarification. That's all my questions.
Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, I think this case speaks very well to the fact that every rezoning case has its own unique features. You know, the walkability requires the 3 Ds, density, diversity, and design. And so those are three things that I constantly, and we should constantly be advocating for: density, density of people, diversity of uses, diversity of people, diversity of housing types, and design. So connectivity, sidewalks, all the elements of design that contribute to building a pedestrian-friendly environment. That just doesn't exist in this area, so it's awkward. There's not going to be any connectivity to the west. There's no potential connectivity to the north because at that time streets were not required to stub out, so there's not even a potential to connect in that direction. There is the greenway. If you go east from here, there's some connectivity across the street. There's the sidewalk and connection to Aldi. It's about a 8 to 10 minute walk, which is not bad. It's not ideal, but it is not bad, and it's much better than in most parts of Durham. But this site speaks to the fact that it's very awkward to try and transition a city from one that is completely auto-dominated to one that at least advances some element of other types of multimodal transportation opportunities to residents. And I don't fault neighbors and residents nearby this site for having heartburn over this proposal because it doesn't have the 3 Ds, because the 3 Ds are not even attainable because of the context and past development standards, and even current development standards that don't require elements of walkability. Of course, we're updating those standards now. So I don't fault neighbors, and at the same time, we do at this, up on the dais here and on this council, need to think through what can we do to muddle our way through and make developments slightly better, and ensure that there are proposals that are slightly better that are coming here. I love to see 10% of units going for affordable housing. Of course, that's 80% AMI. This is proposing around 6%, with half of those going to 60% AMI. So it's about what we've been seeing. We have a comprehensive plan. It's a new comprehensive plan. We get a lot of proposals up here that aren't even consistent with the comprehensive plan that end up getting approved. This one is fairly close to consistency and might even be considered consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. So I do have heartburn over verticalizing and making vertical auto-centric development and auto-centric design, because I don't think that the fact that this will have density means that it will be walkable. I don't think that it will. But there are some important things in this proposal that we don't often see in proposals. The green building standards, that's something we don't often see. The connectivity, the walkability, the actual walkability to a grocery store, which is extremely rare. If you do cross the street, and I know it's dangerous, going to the Greenway, that gets you to a lot more other commercial options. So with that said, you know, I have a high standard for development in Durham. I think that we need to elevate our standards. I wish that I want our whole council to have higher standards for development. I think that we need to do that, and we do that sometimes by saying no to developments that don't meet our expectations. For this one, I am on the fence. I am leaning toward this one. I think that there have been a lot of changes since the Planning Commission, and I don't like voting against the Planning Commission. A lot of changes since the Planning Commission that have improved the case. However, I want to listen to my colleagues. I do have a couple of questions for the applicant. First one is, how would you blend this proposal? How would you blend the development architecturally with the surrounding area?
Yeah, so the topic of how do we ensure compatibility with our single-family neighbors was the first issue that we hit head on. I mean, we were anticipating things coming up, and when we looked to the neighbors to the north, we thought, you know, what could be done here? We're also trying to be sensitive to the environmental features to our west and kind of playing both sides of that. So when we initially tried to think about being compatible, we talked about if there could be a transitional housing type or something like that. With a site of this size, if we were to have something like a townhome style apartment, what you ended up doing is pushing density further south, and you just couldn't really achieve the development we were looking for. So what we did was we prioritized buffers, setbacks, and then the environmental and sustainable commitments. I think if you look at Trinsic's product types and their offerings throughout the triangle, you'll see what they offer is really high quality, but also unique, architecturally interesting projects. And that would certainly be the case here, but they also do it while incorporating those affordable units throughout the project.
Thank you. Do you have any interest in voluntarily making those units affordable in perpetuity?
It's not something that we've studied. I think that I've heard discussion of it, but I don't know that we appreciate the impacts of it. So we're not able to do that at this point, but we certainly, I think as it moves in the future, it'll be something that we research and see if we can understand better.
Yeah, you didn't look into it?
No, it's come up within the last week or so on my personal radar, and so it's something that I think
I brought it up with you during our meeting. I think I brought it up with you.
If it was in perpetuity, I did not hear it in that meeting, but I did have a recent conversation where I, took note of it.
Okay. All right, that's it. That's it for me for now.
Councilmember Freeman, any comments, questions?
Sure, I would definitely say I appreciate the developers' changes from the Planning Commission. I'm on the fence as well. I think what is most concerning for me is I want to say that I do want to echo Councilmember Baker's comments in recognizing how tedious each site is. And so I do want to ask kind of architecturally, are you saying that you couldn't do like a 1 or 2 story arm to the site?
So it's a kind of a function of a number of features of the site. When access is controlled at certain points, it means that our driveway is coming in. So if we were to, on that northern side, if we were to try and put some component of the project, it reroutes streets in a way that's inefficient, and it just kind of didn't result in a good overall project. So we did look at, well, let's just do a transitional housing type. We thought that the better outcome after studying it was just to provide better buffers, that was more meaningful in this particular site.
And I would say that with the 10 additional units of affordable housing, this would be a really great and easy way to say yes. But without that, I do have still weighing it out. I think I do want to note that I heard the comments about, you know, a property owner, an actual property owner trying to develop land in a way that's really conducive or conserving the natural heritage over time, acknowledging that it's not often that there are Black families who have held land, this much land in our city, and have been able to come forward in a way that benefits not just their pockets, but our community. And so I hear the natural heritage piece of this, and I'm kind of open, but I do want to hear some more. And so I'm listening to some of the comments or some of the additional questions that might come forward. And I would also say that I want to appreciate the volunteers of our Planning Commission. I want to make sure we continue to say that I appreciate our volunteer planning commissioners who spend countless hours in these cases, and the comments may not seem on the face of it based on the context of our UDO or our new study, but what I'm most concerned about is that we're being more supportive of our developers actually coming to the Planning Commission with these types of actual items beforehand, so that it doesn't create a rift in how the council votes versus the Planning Commission. But thank you. Other than that, I'm listening.
Thank you, Councilmember Rist.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks to my colleagues, first of all, for their comments. This is really helpful. Thanks to the applicant for this proposal. I agree there's no perfect development out there. These are all sort of complex. We've heard some concerns here and some questions. I just had a question about this, and I want to speak to this issue of connectivity, which I think is actually interesting with this project. So could you talk about this additional 5-foot sidewalk that's off-site? If NCDOT will allow you to build that, say more about that and what it's going to take. Because as I understand, that will connect your site to the sidewalk with the site just to the north, and allow someone to walk essentially to Aldi and Aldi's, it's only half a mile away, right? This is not that far, right?
That's correct. You know, it seems like a small component of this project, but it took us several months to work through it, and took a couple other lawyers that are smarter than me to figure out how to make it work. But essentially, you know, we're required to build a 10-foot multi-use path along our frontage, you know, pedestrian and bicycle friendly. There's a sidewalk to the north, but there's this gap right at our property line. And when we looked at it, it seemed like, well, let's figure out how to make this connection. What you have there is some sort of a utility with underground wires, and you have right-of-way where it appears that DOT has the rights because the right-of-way is platted, but what we didn't have was documentation that time as to was the proper sequencing done, and are we certain that we can make that sidewalk connection? We got ourselves to a level of comfort after a lot of work that this gap, it's in a neighborhood of 50 to 100 yards, is critical, and we found a solution to do it. So by committing to that piece, you now can walk from our site to all that commercial, and without that connection, it wasn't going to be a possibility.
So it's definitely, it's not, I mean, is it still sort of in sort of process, or is it for sure you can?
So our analysis is that there is sufficient right-of-way. What we're protecting against is some unforeseen interpretation, but when we look, we have the right-of-way to do it, and we're confident that we can get it constructed.
Appreciate that. And then also, could you also confirm, so, because I've also been interested in the transit connectivity. So often these developments don't have any transit. So what's the closest bus stop is what? It's less than a mile away, right?
Less than a mile. I think it's 0.8 miles. Staff will know that. It was in the report, but I might not have it perfectly. It's under a mile, though.
That sounds correct. The closest stop would be up near the Aldi.
On Renaissance, yeah. Okay. Another question I have, and also I want to appreciate my colleague, Councilwoman Friedman, for mentioning all the volunteers in the Planning Commission. I take their comments very seriously. I also, as a member of the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, take seriously the volunteers at BPAC who also review all these proposals. And I know they talked about that path there. There was another proposal from BPAC, and I wonder if you consider this, and that was to have a pedestrian crossing at Buck Crossing Drive. Is that something you considered?
We considered it, and we worked with Earl Llewellyn on it and determined that it probably wasn't the best idea, and that the safest solution would be to provide the sidewalk connection that we're prioritizing here.
Up to Renaissance, essentially.
Yeah, to head north from the site.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, again, I think there's no perfect development. I appreciate the concerns and you've showed in the additional progress since Planning Commission. Again, I do take the Planning Commission's comments very seriously and read them for each case. And I do, yeah, I think these proffers respond to what their concerns of the Planning Commission. So I will be supporting this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank my colleagues, as always, for really insightful and probative comments and questions. I do want to respectfully say that I think that there's a difference between different standards and higher standards. I have policy differences with my colleagues from in any number of areas, from whatever to valuing what I think should be centering the comments of folk who live in affected areas. But it would never occur to me to characterize a differing view from one of my colleagues as higher or lower. It's just different. One of my values is I don't think that 17 single-family by right homes serves our city's long-term values. And one of the things that centers me in decisions like this is these are practical, non-academic, real-world decisions. Every yes we make is a no to something else, and every no we say is a yes to something else. That's just the nature of this job. And I bring all of my concerns and values to the discussion, to the debate, but in the final analysis, it comes down to an actual vote. And my final question is, what is the real-world impact of this vote? I heard a word that I think is really operative. Durham is a developing city. We are a city. We are a growing city. We are an urban environment. I'm a single-family home owner in Durham, and I voted within the last year and a half on at least 2 projects that are going to place apartments within close proximity to my own home. So I get it. Every neighborhood in this city is experiencing growth. I can't insulate mine from it, and I don't want to insulate mine because I want our city to be welcoming. And in an urban environment, you will see different types of housing products, apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes. I'm seeing it in my neighborhood, and we will see it in other neighborhoods as well. I do want to echo something that Councilmember Rist said. I wrote a note to myself that I take very seriously the Planning Commission's comments as well, but so do developers. And I have watched developments evolve based upon no votes from the Planning Commission. This development has evolved, and I think it's in a much better place precisely because of our Planning Commission, the vote. So I want to as well salute the Planning Commission vote. Sometimes a no vote from the Planning Commission may have more dramatic impact than yes votes from them, because a yes vote may signal that you're done. And we've gotten, I think, better results from developers with no votes from the Planning Commission. I do also want to thank the residents who spoke out tonight and just address a couple of things that they said, namely, well, firstly, I should say the occupancy of nearby apartment complexes. I don't know, and I'm not questioning the veracity of the statements. I don't know those numbers. I don't know how many of those units are affordable in those other complexes. My suspicion is that the ones that are affordable are probably occupied, and there might be some wrangling over the market-based ones. But if there are, in fact, even affordable units in those complexes that have been alluded to tonight, but this one does have affordability, and I think the affordable units in this apartment complex are better than the 17 single-family homes that would be built by right. My values are I don't think that would serve us well. And with respect to traffic, the traffic argument almost speaks to development in this area as a whole, as opposed to this particular project. And I want to be very careful about, and I've said this time and time again, that, the scope that we're dealing with tonight is this particular project that's before us. The argument could be made that if it's true for this development, then it's true for any other development out there. And if the only thing that's going to be acceptable from a traffic point of view are townhomes or single-family homes, notwithstanding that it did not cross the threshold for a TIA, notwithstanding what the experts say. And I get it, because as a layperson, I determine traffic by my own comfort as opposed to science. In other words, if I'm sitting in the traffic jam at the highest point of the day, to me, we have a problem. although the road may be nowhere near capacity from a scientific point of view. So I get it. I've sat on 70 trying to make that turn on Miami, from Miami to 70, and have cussed out my own council, and I'm on it. But realizing that scientifically what capacity is very different from my experience as an individual private commuter. Finally, I will say, and I want to say respectfully, I've listened to some pretty interesting arguments when it's come to apartments. And I think it may have been Councilmember Freeman that somewhat alluded to this. I've listened to some pretty interesting arguments particularly about apartments over the years that I've been on this council. I'll just say that we need landowners, we need equity. We also need folk who rent to have somewhere to live as well, in all parts of our city, in all neighborhoods, just like in mine. And all of us in the city are going to have to deal with that as well. So with all of that said, again, I want to thank my colleagues for their comments. I want to thank the Planning Commission for what I think was a pretty successful goading and prompting of this developer to better their project. I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Colleagues, were there any other comments? Baker, go ahead.
I want to follow up on Councilmember Riss' question. I don't think I might have missed it. So there's the recommendation from BPAC on the crossing to the Buck Crossing Drive. I think safety on NC 751 is a legitimate concern. And you mentioned that it was determined, there was a determination that it wasn't safe.
We looked at the best options to consider, and there may be a way to do it, but that ultimately we thought it was better to prioritize pedestrian and bicycle traffic along the sidewalk connection to the north. That was our analysis.
Was that staff? Were you involved in that analysis, or is that purely?
Planning staff was not. I don't know that transportation staff was. I don't think they were either. That
Okay, because I know in the past there have been some BPAC comments where staff wasn't totally on board with every single BPAC comment. I just wanted to check and see if that was the case here.
Yes, Bill Judge, Transportation. I think it's highly unlikely that NCDOT would permit a marked crosswalk across NC 751 at that intersection, but we have not, at least transportation staff have not had that conversation with them. But in order to put in the crossing, you would have to, at the very least, likely construct ADA ramps on both sides of 751. And then the question becomes whether or not the state would allow an unsignalized marked crosswalk across 751 at that location.
So the value of BPAC's comments, because I think those are important, and I do think that the crossing of 751, I mean, that's pretty vital to being able to access the Greenway and all of the other amenities to the east. The value of BPAC's comments, they just went to the developer and weren't necessarily, there wasn't follow through on BPAC's comments. I'm just trying to understand exactly what role BPAC's comments play.
Sure, the comments are provided to the applicant during the review process. They are also provided to the Planning Commission as part of their deliberations. So both Planning Commission and the applicant and the public can review BPAC's comments and make comment, but again, they are only advisory at this time.
Okay, and you looked at BPAC's comments and.
So I mean, we looked at the options. I think, you know, as transportation staff just mentioned, I think part of the discussion is that we thought it was unlikely to be approved, so it just wasn't of the utmost priority because we thought it was so remote. What I'd say on behalf of the developer is we would never be opposed to making that connection. I think pedestrian connectivity is always important, so if permitted, we would certainly be open to it.
Are you interested in making a commitment to that?
Yeah, we would commit to, if approved by DOT, we would make that connection.
Okay. Do we get that?
Yes, we can work out the wording and clarify that with the applicant, but just to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, you're committing to, if approved by NCDOT, a marked crosswalk at Buck Crossing Road across 751.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments, colleagues? All right, thanks for this rich discussion. And yeah, the reason why I talk about so many festivals and, convention center and other ways that can bring people together and generate more revenue is because the more options that we can take advantage of to generate revenue, the more funds we can have available to do what we're supposed to do. One thing I hate, and this is nothing on you all as developers, but I hate the fact that we have to rely on you all to fill in the infrastructure that we should be responsible for. You're building the housing. I wish we could actually do the sidewalks. That way, where I used to live on Garrett Road, it's not so fragmented. I wish that, when I moved from Garrett Road to Palladium Place Apartments, and I would have to, depending on what time of day it is, whether it's 9 a.m. or 4 to 5:30, have to go on Highway 54. It's a single lane surrounded by U.S. Army Corps, the Army Corps of Engineers land. I wish that we could be responsible for widening that, so I wouldn't have to wait, 15 minutes to get 1 mile. So I get what the neighbor's saying. I was the Ward 3 representative. I lived over there. But here we are with our hands out begging for you all to fill a freaking sidewalk. If that was on us, then, I think we could really implement that plan a lot better. So when I think about Raleigh and Dreamville, how they're about to get this $20 million economic impact, they're going to be able to do a lot with that. That benefit from taxes. So I hope that we are, I hope that we'll begin to think more holistic in how we can generate more revenue to do more things rather than just relying on developers. And now we're relying on you all to rely on another agency who, for goodness sake, we can't get DOT to do much of anything right now. So I hope that comes through. When it comes to housing, despite what anybody says, there's basic fact and logic. When housing is exclusive, it's expensive. When housing is not as exclusive, then therefore the market responds by the price coming down. I'm not making that up, and that's not a Leo interpretation. That's not a President Biden interpretation. That is 1 + 1 = 2. That's making the math. So I think about it overall in terms of supply, and then I think about what types of housing that we have, and if we can increase the housing supply at every single level, then we can respond to every level of interest that is coming into our community, as well as those who are here. And when it comes to when people say, well, what about affordable housing for us? If you're homeless and you don't have a house, that's something I think that it's a crisis, and we need to be able to assist as much as possible. But we're trying to respond to what we know is coming. This is a growing community, and I don't want to look at a vacancy rate now and say because we have this vacancy rate we shouldn't do anything else. Just simply look at the numbers at RDU and how they're growing as far as people coming in and out of this community. Look at, the job growth. Look at the jobs that are coming. The worst thing we could do is say in 2024, oh, we have X vacancy rate, so we shouldn't do anything else. And then as soon as some company breaks ground and they bring, it's like we try to hire as much as we can locally, but when we can't, we start bringing other people in. I shouldn't say we, but it's just what happens. Next thing you know, we have housing to be much more exclusive again, and we're back with our hands out begging for affordable housing. I'm trying to be more holistic. I'm thinking about affordable living. I'm thinking about how transportation works with the housing types that we have, with the jobs that we are actually having here. So this isn't philosophical for me, it's practical. And so as someone who actually lived in that area for several years, I also know what makes DOT move is the logic of density. And I do see, you know, there are several townhomes over there, there's several single-family homes over there, there's some apartments over there. I see this as a mixed-type community, and this is only contributing more to it. I do think that the more we densify in this area, the more that we're going to be able to have transit resources respond to that. Again, that's not philosophical, that's practical. So I'll be supporting it as well. With that being said, thank you all for this debate and this conversation, not necessarily debate, but it's rich conversation. I just love the perspective of my colleagues and how we view these issues. But that being said, I will go ahead and bring us in.
Before we move forward, I have a question.
You have a question?
I just wanted to check in with staff regarding that watershed area and just making sure that there is a review or some on-ramp for analysis that's already happening. And so I just wanted to ask exactly where that review would be occurring, or
On the watershed?
so I know that the residents raised the issue around being concerned about the ecological impact. And I'm thinking, I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm certain there is some review that happens currently. Is that review something that those residents could follow?
So that, I think what you're referring to is the stormwater requirements and how the stormwater requirements or stormwater release may affect the natural heritage area to the west. So there's a couple of things going on. First, when this project goes to the site plan stage for site plan review, site plan will make sure that they are following the development plan that you are considering tonight, and make sure that none of the building or parking or paving that area remains undisturbed in the site plan. And then there will also be stormwater review. There will be a stormwater requirements that they will need to meet, and that will also be handled during the site plan stage. Now, site plan is an administrative review. It doesn't come back to a governing body to review. That simply is a process of if they meet the requirements, they meet the requirements. If they follow the law, they follow the law, and they are therefore approved.
And then just along the lines around the flooding that could occur from this, how are we analyzing if an increase of flooding is occurring?
If there's an increase, that would be, I'd have to defer to our public works folks and stormwater as to exactly how that handles. You're getting a little bit out of my area of expertise, unfortunately, on stormwater issues. But again, that would be addressed through the site plan stage and site plan making sure, and stormwater making sure that they're following all the commitments they've made through the development plan process.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we are now at the point of the motion. I'll entertain a motion to adopt an ordinance annexing R-751 into the city of Durham and to authorize the city manager to enter into a utility extension agreement with Transit Acquisition Company, LLC.
Moved as read.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor? I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, please open the poll. Please close.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And motion two, to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance by taking property out of residential rural major transportation corridor I-40, Falls, Jordan District B, county jurisdiction, and establishing the same as planned density residential 30.594 major transportation corridor I-40, Falls, Jordan District B, city jurisdiction.
Move as read.
Second.
Been moved and properly second. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
And the motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And the final motion, to adopt the consistency statement as required by North Carolina General Statute, Section 160D, 605.
Move to adopt consistency.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you so much. Colleagues, at this time, we will take a break for 10 minutes before getting into the next one. We'll be back at 9:06.
Last two, Mayor Pro Tem.
Here's some tips to ensure that your garbage and recycling gets picked up. 1. Your carts should be put out for collection before 6 a.m. on your collection day. 2. Your carts should be at least 3 feet from all other objects such as mailboxes, telephone poles, fire hydrants, trees, and other carts. 3. Your carts should be no more than 3 feet from the curb. 4. No vehicles should be blocking your carts. The mechanical arms on our trucks need direct access to your carts and cannot reach around vehicles. To find more information about garbage and recycling pickups, go to this web address.
Everyone in Durham should be able to find a home they can afford. That's why Forever Home Durham is creating affordable, livable, and inclusive communities for low to middle income residents. From renting to owning, find out how the city is helping more people find homes right here in Durham. Learn more at foreverhomedurham.com.
Owning a home provides a sense of financial stability, family, community, and pride. But housing prices are now higher than ever, making it hard for many Durham residents to afford their first home. That's why the City of Durham is offering the Down Payment Assistance Program to support eligible individuals with up to $80,000 in 0% interest forgivable loans to purchase a house within the city limits. Visit this site or call to find out if you qualify for the program.
study for more.
I didn't eat earlier. All right, welcome back. All right, moving on to the next project. As I can see. So we're going to make an agenda adjustment. Colleagues, Chelsea's looking at me like, what? Item 22 is 1324 Bungalow Avenue. Are they here? Online, maybe? Okay. It's a really, really simple one-unit, non-controversial. I think we can get through it fairly soon, so we can get that knocked out before we move to the more expansive one. Colleagues, are we okay with that? All right. So staff, we will move number 22 up. We'll now receive your report.
Thank you, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and honorable council members. This case is BDG 23-00022. It is a request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and initial zoning map change from Linda Russ of SVN Real Estate Associates for one parcel of land and right-of-way totaling 0.82 acres and located at 1324 Bungalow Avenue. This annexation petition is non-contiguous to the primary corporate limits, but is contiguous to an existing satellite. The intent of the annexation is to access water and sewer services. The property is currently designated established residential on the place type map. The proposed residential suburban 20 zoning is generally consistent with the designated use shown on the place type map. If the proposed initial zoning is approved, there will be no change to the place type designation of established residential. Thank you, and staff is available to answer any questions.
You've heard the staff report. Colleagues, are there any questions for staff? Right. I will now declare this public hearing open. Do we have anyone here? Do I have anybody online? 22. All right. Colleagues, is there any commentary? All right. I'll now declare this public hearing closed and back before the council. All right. And I'll entertain a motion to adopt an ordinance annexing 1324 Bungalow Avenue into the city of Durham and to authorize the city manager to enter into a utility extension agreement with CWH Properties, LLC.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
Unanimously.
Thank you so much. And motion two, to adopt an ordinance amending the UDO by taking property out of the residential suburban 20 Falls Jordan Lake Watershed Overlay District B county jurisdiction and establishing the same as residential suburban 20 Falls Jordan Lake Watershed Overlay District B city jurisdiction.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote. Report out.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And finally, to adopt motion three, to adopt a consistency statement as required by North Carolina General Statute, section 160D-605.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Please close the vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. That was probably the most controversial thing we've ever did. All right. And our final hearing tonight is number 21, Consolidated Annexation Leigh Valley. Staff will receive your report now.
Thank you, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and the honorable council members. A request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and initial zoning map change has been received from Laura Holloman of McAdams for 6 parcels of land totaling 28.57 acres and located at 5412 and 5416 Wendell Road and 5529 and 5533 George King Road. This annexation petition, BDG 22-00033, is by state law a non-contiguous annexation request, though the request is now contiguous to the current city limits. The applicant also requests a zoning map change from the current residential suburban 20 to residential compact with a development plan to allow between 310 and 340 units consisting of townhouse, multiplex, and/or apartment units. The properties are currently designated Transit Opportunity Area on the place type map. While the RCD zoning district is generally in line with the TOA place type, the RCD is only fully consistent with the TOA place type when the development plan commits to transit-oriented design and an additional commitment to civic, commercial, or office use. If the proposed zoning is approved, staff recommends a change to the place type map to designate the entire property as apartment and townhouse neighborhood, as the characteristics and policies with this place type are more in line with the proposal. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this proposal on an 8-5 vote at its February 13th, 2024 meeting. Bear in mind, there is one parcel in the annexation request, read 141615, that is presently zoned RS20 in the county jurisdiction. The applicant proposes to change this designation to RS20 in the city jurisdiction. This parcel is being included in the annexation petition to ensure the lift station serving the site will be within the city limits. Thank you. Its staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any questions for staff? All right, I'll now declare this public hearing open. Welcome, Mr. Applicant Ghosh. How much time do you think you need?
7 minutes.
All right, Madam Clerk, please put 10 minutes on the clock. I don't trust y'all.
Good evening, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and members of the City Council. I am Neil Ghosh with the Morningstar Law Group, and I'm representing the applicant and property owner for the rezoning, which is Greenhawk. With us tonight are Laura Holloman with McAdams, as well as Earl Llewellyn with Kimley Horn, and also Jeremy Medlin with Greenhawk. I want to thank Mr. Kane for his presentation. And as has been stated, this is a development on about 29 acres of land in the compact neighborhood tier. And I think this is important because a number of things have changed within the UDO over the course of this project. And those changes in the UDO had some pretty dramatic impacts to this project. When we submitted this rezoning, there was no tree cover required in the compact neighborhood tier, and there also was no project boundary buffer that would have been required for this project. Changes in the UDO were adopted, which now require tree cover in the compact neighborhood tier. And I think you all are familiar with the mass grading and phase development text amendment. Those place a requirement for project boundary buffer on any project grading more than 4 acres at a time. So we had to take some time to make sure we could fit all of those items which were not required at the time we initially filed the zoning. The good news is that we were able to accomplish those things and still maintain the minimum density at 12 dwelling units per acre, and even more, we were able to commit to providing more than double the amount of required open space. So it did work out, but the site is very tight as a result. This is an interesting project, primarily because of the product type that's envisioned here. I'm not sure if there's a good example of it here in Durham. The closest thing I can think of are the villas at Culp Harbor, but basically these are going to be townhome style units, except they'll be set up in a quad format rather than in a line. At least some of them will be set up that way. And so that, you know, traditional townhomes, you think of them as side by side by side. These are kind of back to back to back in a quad format. So, you know, just like a typical townhome, each unit will have its own separate entrance, but because of the way it's set up, each unit would have like a side yard and or front and backyard. as well. So it's really interesting product type. There also will be kind of duplex style units as well, but these will all be set up, you know, kind of as a multifamily development. Greenhawk made the decision to use this product type here because there are a lot of multifamily, traditional multifamily developments right in this corridor. Pretty much everything around here has been approved for multifamily or is already built for multifamily. So they want to differentiate the product a little bit, but still envision mostly as a rental product here. I think it's been stated there will be a minimum density of 12 dwelling units per acre, which means at least 310 units must be built. We have also put a max of 340 units. And we've committed to providing 3% of the final unit count as income restricted at 80% AMI. I think this project will add meaningfully to the housing stock in our city. I noticed that the staff report reflects a commitment of $5,000 to DPS, and I'm fairly certain we discussed this at the Planning Commission hearing. Probably the paperwork is on us, but I did want to make sure that based on the information in the staff report, we did increase that number at the Planning Commission to $53,500. The 5,000 was a plug number we had in our rezoning application before we got information about student generation numbers. The project also commits to handling the 100-year storm event. We have another commitment related to having more than one type of stormwater system. Greenhawk has committed to using native species for required plantings and landscaping, as well as having active elements for their amenity package. There are some architectural commitments to ensure varying sizes of the units. It's a pretty robust set of commitments overall. I also want to touch a little bit on infrastructure. It was mentioned there's a parcel included in the annexation that is not included as part of the rezoning, and that is because this project, we have talked to Public Works, this project will be putting in a lift station to handle this site, and that lift station is going to be designed, it's not quite in the lowest spot in this basin, so that lift station will be designed per direction from the Public Works Department to be taken offline when I believe it's a parcel across the street, across George King, that represents kind of the low point where they want the ultimate lift station to go. So when that comes online, the lift station that this project would implement would be designed to be able to be taken offline. This project is also going to be, well, not going to be, it is committed to, what is the word I'm looking for? Dedicate right-of-way for various collector roads that are shown on the collector street plan that's been adopted by the MPO. And those collector streets do take out quite a large portion of this property, but also they kind of set up a weird offset in the middle of the property with the way the north-south collector street goes. So a lot of infrastructure is proposed as part of this development. We're happy to report that we have a recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission, which I think, as you all know, that's not a simple task, and we hope you will join them in their support of this project. Our team is available to answer any questions you may have, and we look forward to getting your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, going to start with our folks online, which I only have two. Mary McClure? No? Pam Ritchie?
Neither folks are online, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I see they're Chapel Hill residents. All right, this is a public hearing. If there are any other,
Ronnie Covington is online. She was marked as 20, but she wanted to speak to 21.
oh, that's right. Yeah, that's I remember. Ronnie, can you hear me? Is she still muted? Ronnie, Ms. Covington, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes. Yeah. Welcome. You have 3 minutes. We're on the correct one now.
Thank you. I come as an opponent to this project. I live in the vicinity. I live in Falconbridge, which is across 54 from where this community is planning on going in. My objection right now is not necessarily to the community, but to the fact that, and you guys talked about this before, on the other development off 751, the traffic in this area is unbelievable. Anyone who tries to get on 40 in morning rush hour or afternoon rush hour, or who tries to get out of any of the communities that flow into 54 or Farrington, it's impossible. I've lived here since 2017. I was a resident in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but not in this part of the county. I left DC to move down here, and the traffic is almost as bad in this area as it was in the communities outside of the Beltway of Washington, DC. I cannot see how you can plan on putting 340 units car only. There's no sidewalks, very few. It's a community that's tucked back from a very country road. I know there are going to be turn lanes put in, but I don't know how that's going to work in this particular section of Farrington Road. I'd like to see more planning for traffic abatement, a collector, I don't know what they're called, a left turn lane on 54 to turn north on Farrington will be extended, and turn lanes going onto Wendell Road, which is the only access for this community. It's just not going to work. The traffic backs up so badly right now that it boggles my mind to think this is something that's on the board to work on without a infrastructure plan for traffic. And I've heard the argument that traffic's, it's a problem all over the place, but it's a particular problem. I cannot get out of my neighborhood in the morning rush hour or afternoon rush hour, either on 54 or on Farrington Road. So besides the fact that we are inundated with these apartment units, just the traffic plan, I think is need of attention. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right. Those are all of the speakers that I have. Again, this is a public hearing. And at this time, I'll declare the public hearing closed and back before the council. All right. Colleagues? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I missed that part. The public hearing, I declare it back open. Applicant, Mr. Ghosh, would you like to respond? Thanks, colleagues. I missed that step.
For just to the one speaker about traffic, I mean, we've studied the traffic here. We've implemented the recommendations from the TIA. I don't know what more to say about that.
Thank you. All right, I'll declare this public hearing closed. That's why I was getting all those looks from everybody. Sorry about that. And back before the council. Colleagues, I start to my left.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions. Could you just, I couldn't really quite hear you, but my reading of the commitment of affordable housing was 3% income restricted at 80% AMI for 20 years. Is that still the same, or has that changed?
That's the commitment, yeah.
Okay. And it's my understanding that there is 30 years has been what staff has sort of designated as affordable housing, because anything shorter than that, the impact is low. By the time that folks move in, they have to move out again. Is there interest in a different amount of years, maybe 30 years, to meet the criteria that our comprehensive plan?
I'm embarrassed to say, our team believes the 20 was a typo. It is on the paperwork. We intended 30, happy to go to 30.
And that is just the 3% and 80% AMI.
Correct.
And we got that. I see staff writing over there, so that's great. And then there, and you didn't bring up any maps, but I think that I was looking at some formerly. There is a wetland area that's on this parcel, but it's quite small. And so it didn't trigger any of the protections under the UDO. Is that correct? It's like 0.4 acres.
I think that's correct. I mean,
Is there a plan for where the utilities will run? I know you talked before about the lift station, but can you talk about the plan for the utilities and maybe help me orient on the map what that would look like?
Sure. I mean, Tyler is here. Tyler Probst with McAdams might be able to speak better to that. I will just take a stab at it, and you jump up, tell me if I'm wrong. So utilities, I believe both are coming from the direction of Wendell Crescent. So from the east of the property. And the lift station is the southernmost section of this property, of the annexation. So the utilities the sewer would, from the site would go to there and then be pumped to George King Road.
And where is the wetlands in relationship to those?
Yeah.
Yeah, good evening. Tyler Probst and McAdams. I'm going to be the civil project manager on this project. Good evening, Mayor, council members. So the wetlands you see there on the map are what the Corps would consider isolated. They did come up in our delineation, but they would not.
One second.
We have the wrong map in front of us. Sorry to interrupt you.
I think that's from the last presentation.
Okay.
We don't have a map loaded for this case. There was no presentation provided, so we don't have.
Right. That's, I think, where I'm having some issues. I have a map in front of me, but if you could walk me through it, that would be helpful.
So those are isolated wetlands on the site. If they are to be disturbed, they would go through permitting with the Corps and the state. And so those would be required permits that we would receive during site plan permitting. And in terms of the utility extensions, they're in the agreement visually. And so we would be looping to planned water lines in Wendell Road in Farrington. There's an existing line in Farrington. And then, as Neil was saying, we're planning a lift station for this site. There is a regional location west of George King for a lift station. So the way this will be designed is there will be a gravity line teed up such that if that project were to ever be developed west of George King Road, this pump station could be taken offline. So the infrastructure would be set up to go ahead and do that seamlessly. And those flows, because we're installing a force main in George King Road, we've already confirmed that that force main and the gravity sewer could handle that future regional lift station too. So that infrastructure would be able to remain in place as well. So kind of killing two birds with one stone and future looking.
Gotcha. And the one that is proposed prior to the one on the west side of George King, since that has not been developed, you said it was going where on the property?
The one
that the lift station that y'all are going to have to implement.
It's going to be on the south side of, it's going to be in the area of annexation that's not in the zoning. So if you're able to have both maps, it will be in that area.
Okay, thanks.
It's one of the southern parcels in the most southern parcel in the annexation, I believe.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions at this time. Thanks.
Quick question for staff, just on connectivity. So this would meet the connectivity requirements, and it is public street. Wait, the private street. Public street I'm a little confused about what's a public street, what's a private street here, because I'm seeing two arrows pointing at one another. One says public street, one says private street.
Councilmember Baker, is that directed to the applicant or to staff?
So is this going to be, just a second for staff real quick, is this going to include, it's going to meet the connectivity requirements through public streets or an internal network of private streets? And then if it's private streets, does that meet the requirements of the connectivity regulations?
So my understanding, it looks to me, based on this development plan, is going to be private streets, but I would ask the applicant to confirm that they are intending for internal private streets on the development.
Yeah, that's correct, that the internal streets would be private streets. The part of the challenge, I guess, with this site is that there are collector roads that are going through. The north-south collector road does not align with the property line, so that only half of that right-of-way is on some of this development, if that makes sense. So we have to cross over the collector road. We have to come from Wendell, existing Wendell, cross over the future collector road to get back to the site. And that might explain why you're seeing two sets of arrows, because one of them is a public access from Wendell, and then after it hits the collector road, it turns to a private street internal to the site.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. I'm actually, I'm going to be voting no against this one. It's not consistent with the future land use map, the comprehensive plan. We just unanimously approved an apartment building, so obviously, you know, I'm not speaking against development in general. I am always pushing for proposals that meet the comprehensive plan, the future land use map. This is calling for a transit opportunity area. As I said before, I mean, sort of thinking about these 3 Ds, density, diversity, and design. Density is good if it also includes diversity of uses, diversity of people. Appreciate the 3% at 80% AMI. And then design, that connectivity is critical to me, and I think with consistency for the comprehensive plan. Commissioner Cease wrote, the application includes no provisions for commercial, civic, or non-residential uses. As solely a residential project, the proposal is inconsistent with the transit opportunity area. With existing projects already in the area and with large undeveloped acreage between this site and whatever transportation investments may occur in the future along Highway 54, essentially inevitable in some form, a site this large should not be cut out of the transit opportunity area. Put differently, reserving or committing to some civic or non-residential component would bring the proposal closer to the intent for the TOA place type. So I'm very much practical, and to me, this application doesn't meet the intent of the comprehensive plan or the future land use map. And I think it would need some substantial changes, in my view, to warrant a yes vote, making it consistent with the comprehensive plan. So just wanted to let my colleagues know I'll be voting no on this one.
Thank you, Councilmember Baker. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. Good evening. Good to see you. So this, I feel like, I don't remember which rezoning it was for further up Farrington, closer to the intersection, and I'm pretty sure y'all were the attorney representing that client, but I remember asking about the residents at that point. I don't know if you remember this, Neil, or not, because I remember driving Wendell and Crescent, and it's just that weird transition to like country gravel. And I asked about those. There is a sign for sale for the acreage, at least for part of it, but it seems like a lot of those homes are still in there. And so when I drove the site, I thought it was just literally adjacent to what's already happening, but there is that section that transitions. That's where so if you're like on, Farrington and you turn left on Wendell, there's a sign at the corner of Farrington and Wendell that says, that property is for sale. But then you go back in there and there's several home sites, and that's what it looks like based on your development plan. And so I guess my question is, it makes sense what's happening in that corridor. I just don't understand how that transitions to where y'all are with those folks kind of stuck in the middle on that little island. And so that's my big concern. Like, I get what's happening there, and I get that, I even understand why you might not put commercial where it is. You don't have great frontage to Farrington, and on the backside of your property, you're not going all the way to whatever King George random, has to be the longest gravel road in Durham. I drove that today, and I was like, oh, this is why I like driving my zoning sites, because you find new things every single time. And so, when you turn down that road and drive it all the way and connect through, because for some reason I thought the connection was on that side of the site. Anyway, which made no sense to me, but then I looked and I was like, oh, no, I was wrong. It's just that kind of awkward island for those residents. So, yeah, thanks.
So first of all, I don't know what you drove, but I hope it had four-wheel drive if you're going down George King.
It was my trusty Sienna. It's got 222,000 miles on it.
That'll do. That'll do. Let me rephrase what you said, make sure I understand. You're talking about the pocket of land that will be left between existing Wendell and the collector road that is supposed to be extended through.
Yeah, it's like if you take a left and you go up Crescent, which is also gravel, and the road ends. And you can see right there all the new development that's happening that's in the transit opportunity zone. But between, at least where your zoning site, like your actual notification, which then that's what marks the land being rezoned, and where the transit opportunity stuff's already happened, there's probably 5 or 6, maybe a few more homes. And it looks like people are selling, but I guess it's just a weird transition. I'm just going to say it. It's odd. It's a little island, and maybe Councilmember Rist can help me out because he was with me. It's this little pocket of like what's happening here between what I think is y'all's thing based on what we drove and saw notified.
So this is what I can tell you. I'm not exactly sure which houses might have for sale signs on them, but Greenhawk actually owns all but one parcel, one single-family parcel that is between where the collector road, north-south collector road is supposed to extend and where Wendell is. I believe there are houses on those properties, but they're not for sale. Greenhawk owns them. That actually is why this is the reason they didn't rezone those properties is because the status of the north-south collector road is in flux. We have committed to putting it where it's shown on the on the collector street plan. That's where we've shown putting it on our development. That's what will be required. However, there are talks about moving that road, that north-south collector road, essentially off of this rezoning property to make it align with kind of existing Wendell, which would create a completely different development scenario from what we're left with right now. So right now, Greenhawk owns properties that are going to be sandwiched between Wendell and this collector street unless the collector street moves. So really, that is really going to determine the fate of that north-south collector road is going to determine how they are able to develop those parcels in the future, which is why they're not part of the rezoning right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That was helpful. Councilmember Freeman.
Just one question. I didn't hear anything about public community conversations or anything of the such. Have you spoken to the residents that live over there?
Yeah, we've had 2 neighborhood meetings, and they were, not that many people came to them. We've had prolonged discussions with folks, property owners that are along Wendell. In fact, through this process, I believe Greenhawk acquired some more property from property owners in that area that we're looking to sell. We've had conversations with folks across George King. This is a kind of a strange area in that it certainly was rural at some point. However, it has been approved for and is developed for a lot of multifamily right now. It's not, I would not describe it as a rural segment right now. And in large part, the property owners in that area had embraced that change and are in fact trying to find developers that will buy their property.
And so I just want to know if specifically you heard from Donna Supple or Elizabeth Brown.
Yeah, I believe that's the one parcel that you don't own, right? Yeah, that's the one parcel that, yes, we've talked with them a couple times.
And I'll tell you what my main concern is the limitation that's created by this site, or just to Councilmember Caballero's point, the satellite, it's essentially like you plant this apartment complex or whatever the type of development with the townhouses, quads, however you deform it, and then you limit the opportunity to even create a commercial space in there. And so, yeah.
If I could respond to that, that's exactly why they hadn't, that's exactly why those parcels, the other parcels that Greenhawk owns, aren't part of this rezoning. If that collector street moves, that opens up a completely different opportunity for how the site could be developed. Until there's clarity on that, I mean, you're talking about developing parcels between two roads.
And then just for staff, I would just love to know how that process would happen with the collector street, like where the on-ramp is for the conversation and how far out it might be.
Yes, Bill Judge, Transportation again. Typically, in this area, the collector street was adopted, I believe, going on about 15 years or so ago. So it has been quite a while, but typically we will work with applicants. So right now they are showing it in the exact location that's shown on the adopted plan. But when they come in with site plans, subdivision plans, other more specific plans, we generally do allow deviations of the alignment to the extent that they're, one, not going to create a hardship for another property owner that's not part of this, that two, that are still meeting geometric standards or other types of reasons that there may be deviating. It could be to maximize their development, but also when these plans were developed, there were not extensive environmental screening done, so there are often environmental reasons for making adjustments to the alignment.
And I think to that point, it's hard to move forward at this point with that one, I'm assuming it's, whomever the owners are, being in the middle of that, it doesn't seem, there's just a huge missed opportunity with that transit area if we're just doing one without the other. So I'm hesitant, but I'm listening.
Yeah, and I'll just say the conversation about the collector street is a little bit complicated in this corridor because there are several property owners that are not Greenhawk, say south of this collector road, that are going to be impacted by where it aligns to the Greenhawk property. Now, we have had, as I said, we've had discussions with property owners all in this area, including the folks to the south. There is a large rezoning project that has been submitted to the city. It's in review for a lot of those properties to the south. It is that project that has requested reconsideration of the alignment of that road. We've been in discussion with them. We told them we would support moving the collector road as they have indicated, which would be over to where Wendell is currently. We're supportive of that, and we preserve our ability to do that by, we'd have to rezone those parcels that Greenhawk owns that are not part of this to move that collector street, and we would do that if the collector street plan was amended, or I guess amended is the right word. So I agree with you that there is potentially a missed opportunity here, but it's going to take coordination between a lot of property owners.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot in flux here in this development. As you said, I mean, there's everything from, when we drove the site, there's like on the backside by King George Road, there's like horse farms back in there. So it was a very rural area. At the same time, it's developing rapidly along 54 and Farrington. There's I know along Farrington, there are a lot of multifamily housing. At the same time, we have this transit opportunity area there, and I do agree with my colleague, Councilman Baker, that I hate to move away from the vision of that fully mixed-use concept there. And so this one seems kind of complicated to me. As we said in the last case, I do respect the Planning Commission, and I've looked at their comments, read them quite carefully. In this one, I'm leaning against this one. I'm not sure it's the right time for this development, because with so much in flux, that's my sense.
I appreciate it. It's interesting to hear you say it, because they did recommend approval. And ultimately, the question about mixed uses did come up. And I mean, I think the part that I think is hard to explain, there is a lot in flux here, but one aspect that's not in flux is what this side of the property, that all the property that Greenhawk owns, what it would be useful for. I mean, this is that section of the property where we're talking about building this development is never going to have extensive road frontage. It doesn't front on Wendell. It's behind it, right? So the other parcels that Greenhawk owns, that's the real opportunity for the mixed use. But it remains to be seen how that's going to be able to be developed until this Collector Street program. But even if the Collector Street moved, the section we're talking about building would be built for residential anyway. That's actually kind of the decision they made to go forward with this rezoning and reserve what they're going to do on the rest of it to see what happens with the Collector Street plan and Durham's long-range plans going forward with, well, at the time we filed, the comprehensive plan was in review, the UDO is going to be rewritten. So there are a lot of things that are in flux, but I don't think that changes what most people would consider conventionally to be the best use for the section of property we're talking about developing for residential. There are no roads that front it. It's essentially behind everything. So if you had mixed use there, nobody would drive by it. It wouldn't be able to survive.
Well, and the last thing is also, compared to the last case, and not that these are all individual cases, but I think the closest, there's not the same connectivity, right? The closest bus stop is probably across 54.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's across. It is across 54. It's kind of down in the Nantucket, I think, area where that restaurant is. That's where the bus stop is, and that's not. I don't believe there is a pedestrian crosswalk there. We have had conversations with the transit authority. This is a transit opportunity area. There are no plans for transit here. So it's an interesting designation. It's not one that I necessarily disagree with, but we can't find any concrete plans for transit in this area, and there's no hiding the ball here. I would not recommend walking from this site to the closest bus stop. It's probably not safe. But I don't know that that's the applicant's fault. There's no plans for transit here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, thanks to my colleagues. So I'm old enough to remember that transit opportunity area, the discussion was different pre-light rail and post-light rail. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, particularly when we're discussing this area. I think the Planning Commission got it right. This is generally in agreement with TOA, but not fully consistent. I guess each council member will have to decide how strict they want to apply the comprehensive plan. But I think the demise of light rail should be kept in mind and impacts this conversation. I agree. I think the Planning Commission got this one right. I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for staff. And then a suggestion to colleagues. The other application that the applicant mentioned for the other development with the potential movement of the Collector Street, that's been submitted. How far along is it in the process with staff?
It went through a first review, or was in the process of doing a first review. If I'm remembering that, if we're talking about the same one, I believe it is currently on hold. The applicant has asked for a kind of a stay on the review for right now as they're working through some issues. This may be one of them. I wasn't privy to those conversations, so I couldn't speak to that exactly. And I believe it's on hold for about another month.
Okay, thank you. So I have a suggestion for the applicant and colleagues. Like, if we move forward this evening, I will be voting no. I think that, maybe it doesn't make sense, but just I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions about the road alignment. I understand that that's not your fault or anything, but I also have to understand what's the kind of connectivity, and there's a lot of moving parts there. So my suggestion to colleagues would be if we could get a continuance, or however we want to phrase it, so that potentially things can align better than they are right now. Otherwise, and that's up to the applicant, but as it currently stands with some of the questions I have, I would be voting no. I am open to either referring it back to staff or doing continuance, whichever one is. Sometimes I know we make a difference. So yeah, thank you.
Could I just ask a clarifying question? I understood the statement you made, and I need to talk to my client, but what is the item or items that you would want clarity for? Referring it back to staff sounds like what you probably want here, because I don't know that there's a date certain. But what are the things we're trying to get more clarity on?
I would like coordination with this other project, which is why I asked about it, so that we can figure out what is happening with this Collector Street. because it does impact things. And if it makes it so that you can include these rando properties that are kind of like island of missing toys over there, then I think it is, to your point, a better project. And that is my goal, is to get a better project. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say that, you know, our comprehensive plan it's a guiding document. It's not a mandated document. So I use it as a reference, not a reliance. So I'm just saying that to let you know how I'm thinking. I am not one to, you know, I don't want to look on paper and say a commercial will go really good right there, because it's not, you know, in a necessary vicinity like that. Just because I think you can look at apartment complexes that came up with the concept that we're going to put retail at the bottom and then the apartments above, because people are above, they're going to just support the retail. That doesn't, in real life, it doesn't work that way. So I would, you know, I'm not going to hold that against you, because as a business owner, it doesn't make sense to just plot something there because it looks good on paper. However, I think that, to Councilmember Caballero's point, it would answer a lot of questions that even you all can't answer just yet. And I think that I also don't want to just put it forward because the conditions are what they are. When we have questions that we can have answered, and if there can be some, I'm not going to say you have to coordinate with anyone else, but more information, the better. I think it'll be supportive of what you all are trying to do here. At face value, I'm willing to support it, but I do like the idea of trying to give it one more chance to just make it work better, even with everything else that's going on around here. So we can.
I think you maybe have a question outstanding to staff, but I'm going to take a minute to talk with the client.
Yeah. What project was that again? The name of it? What was the name of that project?
I believe it's, I'm going to maybe ask Bo to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's Leigh Village Center, I think is the name.
Okay.
Of the other project. And I think we're all talking about the same one. It involves that large 100-acre or so parcel kind of right in the middle of the transit opportunity area. Like I said, that was submitted a couple, 3 months ago. It did start a review process, and then it was asked to be put on hold.
Gotcha, okay. And I spent quite a bit of time with the residents of Cope Arbors over there as well. And just, we don't want to build a fragmented community. I think that when we can work all together in that region, in that area, the better. But we'll leave that decision up to you all, whether you ask for your continuance or whether you have us, refer back to staff, or whether we call for a vote tonight.
Yeah, I mean, so this is Jeremy Medlin. He's with the Greenhawk, the ownership group, open to a continuance. I'm not exactly sure what to say about when we would come back as far as the timeline.
Yeah, I might leave that. I might ask Bo to weigh in here on whether we would set it for a date certain. Right now, in terms of planning items, your two May calendars are already full, so we're getting into June, and I know with budget, so we may be looking at August before we bring this back.
Okay.
I'll leave that to the manager's office, but that may be what we're looking at.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, colleagues. I just want to say, for the record, I'm not really sure what you're going to be doing in that interim period, and I mean, it's not my job to suggest to you to go coordinate with others that aren't part of the, within the scope of what's before me as a decision maker. So I just want to, and I don't want to create the impression that my vote is somehow tethered to, well, it would be a yes pending this or no pending that. It depends on what's before me right now. So I don't really know I have no problem if you want to ask for a continuance, but for me, I could say I'm not really certain what would what would inform me more, particularly, as I said earlier, in light of the changing landscape of that area, with, you know, changes that have happened in our city, light rail and other things. So, yeah, for whatever it's worth, I'm not going to do your work and give you advice one way or another, but I've communicated what my decision would be based upon what's before me tonight. Barring that, I can't say what I would do. I'm not going to even pretend to tether my vote to more or less information. So I just want to say that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, I don't, the thing is, I don't know what we would be able to accomplish. I think the direction we've been given is to try to get some more answers to some questions. But,
I mean,
and we're willing to do that. I don't know that we're going to be able to
to be specific, it's not just random information. What my request, and do with it what you will, is that you all work with the adjacent property owner that has this project on hold to figure out this Collector Street issue, because I think it is pertinent to this project. That is my request. I don't know what other people's request is, and you don't have to take that feedback. I'm just saying that is why I want answers on that particular component of it before I feel comfortable voting yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're open to, I mean, we've already spoken with them. We told them we would lend them our support to moving that Collector Street plan. We were not, this project was not, how would I say, carrying the water on getting that moved. I mean, we have accepted the adopted Collector Street plan. This other project approached us and said, would you be amenable to moving it? We said, sure, if you can get that approved, we would go back and rezone the property to move the right-of-way. But when we filed this, that other project wasn't on the books. I mean, we're ahead of it, obviously. So we filed well before we heard anything about moving that Collector Street plan. So it's a little bit of, I mean, I don't know what to say, what will get done, but I can tell you that the answer is, if there is the right avenue vehicle to get the Collector Street plan moved, Greenhawk is not going to be an impediment to that. We would agree to it. It helps the project immensely if that is moved. But as the Collector Street plan stands now, I mean, we've resigned ourselves to it and have accommodated it.
Thank you.
So colleagues, does it help you if there's a written commitment here, or do we want to just address it in a vote tonight, or what do you all, or applicants, do you all have a preference?
What I heard is that if we were continued, we'd be coming back in August. That's what I think.
Actually, August, I was looking at the calendar, August is also already full, so we're looking at the first meeting in September as the next time we have an open spot.
Allow me a moment here.
And while you take, just for a little clarity, so if they have already committed to the Collector Street agreement, if the other project calls for it to move, they've already agreed to it, are you still suggesting they wait on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think my suggestion, and this is why, and we've done this before when projects have had questions, we have continued them, we have asked applicants to do it, and they almost always come back with a better project. And so that is the opportunity I'm giving this applicant, because this particular project is mostly good, and I want to support it, but I have some reservations. And so if I'm forced to vote tonight, and I have a feeling that based on what I've heard from colleagues, the project fails. Thank you.
Yep.
I mean, we are happy to take continuance and talk to, well, that other project. I don't know if there are other property owners that might be involved in that. We can look at that too. But the statement I made earlier still stands. I just really don't want to overpromise here. I have no idea what it takes to move that or amend that Collector Street plan ahead of August or September at this point.
Mr. Ghosh, if the issue's also talking with MPO, happy to help you set up meetings with that, since I'm the MPO liaison, as is Councilmember Rist. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And
So,
I have a little bit of experience with the MPO myself, so I can.
I heard, so I've heard.
Are you asking for a continuance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
staff would request that the continuance be made to a date certain which would be September 3rd. That is the next available spot we have availability on the calendar at this time.
The Tuesday after Labor Day?
That is the Tuesday after Labor Day, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, sounds good.
So is it continued, or you got to take a vote on that?
No, you've requested a continuance, so we're going to hold this public hearing open until September 3rd, 2024.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, that is all of our business for the evening. Councilmember Freeman had a comment.
Just touching base with my colleagues to have a conversation with a few colleagues, and I believe the city manager mentioned it would be a good idea to bring back the summer camp option for Cornwallis, and I just wanted to get a thumbs up to put it on the agenda for the next, not this work session, but the next work session.
Wait, for just that single site? All right.
Thank you.
All right. Also, just reminding everyone, just for the public, colleagues, I believe you all know already, April 9th, 6 p.m. will be a reception, and 7 p.m. will be the State of the City address in the city-owned convention center and the city-owned Carolina Theater. I'm not going to go into any other details, but this event, while it is the first time it's happening this way, will be held on city-owned property. And I invite the full community to take part. It's going to be an evening of festivities and entertainment and just great performances and just a really good time. April 9th, 6 p.m. pre-reception. And then at 7 p.m. we'll be in the Carolina Theater for the State of the City address. Also, colleagues, I know we're ready to go. Thursday, we will be officially, after several years, back in the committee room for our work session. So, committee members, we will not be in here in the chambers for work session any longer. We will move back to the original location, which is upstairs in the committee room, which is much smaller, just keeping that in mind. But we have new technology. It's pretty phenomenal, and it will be streamed, and yeah, it's quite the enhancement. All right. With that being said, I believe we are adjourned at 10:04. Thank you.